Ready? Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see all our guests today and visitors. Welcome. This is September 16th, 2019. It's about 2:32. We're having our monthly meeting of the Montgomery County Board of Elections at the office of the Board of Elections. I believe 3, 4. We have everybody's here, so we have a quorum. Nobody's missing from this meeting. And first, we're going to have approval of minutes.
I move we accept the minute as amendment, amended by that, and
I have an amendment. An edit.
She has an added.
All right, Alan?
It's an edit.
Oh.
Lisa, can you read it?
Yeah, let me read the edit.
No, I'm listening to the.
What's that?
It's,
Oh, he's doing the chair.
I don't know what he's doing.
Is everyone ready here? It's page 8. It's the only place.
Let's wait a
it's the
second.
place I
We
mentioned
need you over here.
under future vote.
We need you to listen.
All right, wait. Yes. So, Alan, there's a motion to approve the July 29th board meeting minutes with the amendments. But Diane has another amendment.
I have a correction. Who's going first? Should I read it?
Yeah, first, if everybody can keep their voices down, this meeting's being recorded. Appreciate it.
Great. Did Alan have one also? I don't have to go first.
No,
No.
she doesn't have it. Either you need it or give it to Lisa.
Oh, okay.
The minutes
yeah.
in front of you actually have amendments already, changes, proposed edits to the minutes. So if you have something to present,
Yes.
Yeah.
Under future vote program on page 8, the second paragraph of that, where it says Ms. Dillon. Ms. Dillon expressed concerns, and then I X'd everything else out, and I just clarified it, that non-U.S. citizens are allowed to participate in the future vote program as it is stated multiple times on the Board of Elections website for the future vote program. Ms. Dillon asked that the staff provide information at the next board meeting about the genesis of the program and any involvement with outside organizations or county departments which were involved in creating and or running this program.
That's page 8.
Yes.
Can you repeat it or share your document with us or something? I couldn't get it.
Yeah, I wrote it down, whoever's making the changes.
Do you have a copy for?
Lisa.
We have to vote on it before.
Yeah, I just want to.
I want to understand.
I do not have a copy. Not yet.
No.
I can make copies.
Yeah.
You may want to email edits like that in advance.
I know. I intended to.
Are you all going to lecture Diane like you used to lecture me? About sending things in advance? We have a whole process where you have to send
Yeah,
it
she
by.
knows
you know.
that.
Yeah, you got.
We already
She will.
talked
Yes.
about it.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. She would do that in the future.
This was a mea culpa to the board that I didn't get it emailed.
The earlier the better. You know, the sooner the better. That's good.
We generally like to have all of your edits by, I believe, 11 o'clock on Friday.
Friday.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Good.
all
I never knew
edits.
that.
The previous, yeah.
Thank you. I will absolutely make note of that and not miss that deadline.
And then we will
11 a.m. Friday.
integrate whatever your changes
Thank you.
are in and try to designate who's made the changes.
So what are we doing about the minutes?
Can we
Make a copy
put them off?
Can we just
I'm sure you don't want
go ahead?
to. I'm sure you don't. I'm sure you don't want to wait.
Because somebody seconded,
Here
who
it is.
seconded?
Here it
Who
is.
seconded?
I can ask
Who
a question.
seconded my motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, which is whether all of that was said at the meeting, because I did not
We can. I mean,
recall that.
you know,
I can
if there's.
promise you I raised every one of these issues during our discussion.
I mean, if we have a lengthy meeting, if there's going to be a lot of discussion or
All right, then,
research,
let's
we can
read
put it
it
off.
and, yeah, okay. Any problem with that?
Isn't this tape recorded?
Yes, yes, it
It's
is.
in the discussion.
Yeah, but if there's members that want to go back over that and review this,
Well,
we can put it off.
let me say something, please. Since I'm not even sure how long, for a very long period of time, the members of the board, and particularly the members of the board majority, have been suggesting that you wanted less detail in the minutes, that you didn't want to indicate that particular members said particular things. And we have been diligently attempting to comply with that request.
I'm glad you do that, David.
And I'm not finished, thank you.
I want to
all-
thank you before I forget. Go
Okay,
ahead.
well, thank you, Nahid, I appreciate the thanks. My request would be that whatever rules we have apply to everybody. And if, if individual members are going to, if we're going to go back to individual member statements being inserted into the minutes, that's not the direction that Jackie and I were going in with the minutes committee. It was not the direction that the board wanted to go in. Now, admittedly, the board voted before Diane got on the board. So it would be great to figure out what the process is. But I think the one thing that we have to agree to is that whatever our rules are for the minutes, they should apply to everybody.
Okay, can I respond?
Sure.
I think I just got schooled unnecessarily because the only reason I brought this up was that whoever wrote the minutes in the first place put my name in and attributed comments to me. So, I'm not adding anything, I'm clarifying.
Well, it looks like what's in the minutes originally, you covered the first sentence.
And the action item, Jim, is number 6, action item. That's in there already.
What page?
Page 9.
Page 9.
Last page.
It's not in as much detail as how Diane is
Diane,
proposing.
if you look at page 9, item 6,
Page 9 of,
of the minutes,
Here, Diane.
item 6.
okay, okay.
Okay, that is said.
And then there should we ask, and that the genesis of the program and any involvement, I kind of talked ad nauseum about how was this originated, is the Board of Education involved in it, blah, blah, blah. There was quite a lengthy discussion that I thought was important to my point in the last meeting. So if you want to put my second sentence, take my name out, just, it was requested that staff provide.
Well, you want to add to the future, the action item number 6, in response to Ms. Dillon's request, board staff will research the question of the genesis of the program and
Right, but it's more than screening. My main issue is, before we even get there, it's on the website all over the place. U.S. citizens, you need not be a U.S. citizen to participate in our electoral process. And I want to make sure that's clarified. So it's more than the genesis. I think there's an issue that we need to talk about in the future about participation with non-citizens in our programs.
Are you suggesting, Diane, that there's something illegal about what we're doing?
I'm not. Why would you raise it to that level?
Because I'm trying to understand what your concern
I think
is
it's
about
a policy.
Right, but I'm trying to understand what your concern is about our website accurately reporting what our rules are for our programs.
I'm disputing the program.
well, right now we're just talking about the minutes.
Right.
Well, David's now raising it to a whole new level.
No, we'll discuss the program in the future.
I'll hold my.
But Diane, if we just
Okay,
add in number 6, we'll research the question of. I think we can accommodate.
just a paragraph. Yeah.
Just add in there to get information, which I made this abundantly clear.
Okay, just put
The
because
genesis
we want to put the
of the-
summary. That's not the
In
whole.
6.
Yeah,
Summary.
under 6, see where the parentheses are? Just add, in response to
What
request,
I don't have
board
parentheses.
staff will research the question. Do you have my language over there?
I'm just not sure where you're saying parentheses on number 6.
Yeah, I'm saying add under number 6.
Add the genesis
Yes.
of the program and any involvement with outside organizations or county departments which were involved in creating and or running this program.
Yes.
Anybody have problem
And add
with
that under number 6 and after question of.
Yes.
Right. Anybody have problem with that?
Well, I would add, keep in the question of screening Future Vote Citizens for Citizenship, comma, and and the genesis, yes, citizenship and the genesis of the program, blah, blah, blah.
So Lisa, how would it read?
So it would read, under action items number 6, in response to Ms. Dillon's request, board staff will research the question of screening future vote students for citizenship, comma, and the genesis of the program and any involvement with outside organizations or county departments which were involved in creating and or running this program.
Okay?
Any comment?
Anybody have problem with this?
And just to
Changes?
clarify, in your the second paragraph under future vote program, that's all staying the same?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
So
All right. All those in
that
favor?
about express concerns, blah, blah, blah.
All right.
My
Yes,
first sentence.
regarding
Right.
possibilities, all of that stays.
Okay. All those in,
I'm sorry. What stays? What stays is what's in the minutes now.
correct.
Correct.
And then you're picking up at the end of number 6. You're picking
Yes.
up
Correct.
from the end of Diane's last portion there.
Yes.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
changed in the minutes
Listen.
under future vote
Yeah, all right then.
on page
9.
No,
Eight.
gee, I must
Originally
have
the
been
same.
working.
Page 8.
Page 8.
Yes, there.
But that's going on 9, page 9.
No. No,
This is page 8.
Page 8, where it says Ms. Dillon expressed,
Concern regarding the possibility. Okay?
it's Ms. Dillon expressed concerns that non-U.S. citizens are allowed to participate in the Future Vote program, as it is stated multiple times on the BOE website for the Future Vote program. I find it very important that that be under Future Vote in the minutes.
So your proposed edit then is to go back onto the second paragraph of page 8, and where you have Ms. Dillon expressed concerns,
Yes.
add your first part of your proposed recommendation submitted today,
Yes.
and take out, are we still taking out anything else on here?
Anything after
Concerns,
concerns
and add your
and add
insert
my,
of this
yes,
top
because
part.
you guys just requested that I bifurcate my edits, so I have. I'd like the first sentence in that under future vote, and then the second sentence, starting after the parentheses, add the genesis to the minutes. And my extreme apologies to the board for dragging you through this.
Yeah, next
I'm
time,
not-
do it in advance, Diane.
I'm getting it
okay?
out.
Do it in advance so we
Yeah.
don't have to deal with this. We got 30 people here.
Yeah.
Okay, now, are we finished?
That is her proposed, and I think
Okay.
you made a motion already, Nahid?
We already
What?
made the
It's on the
motion.
website.
Does it say it?
Exist, it's the genesis of it.
Well,
that
that's
part
not what
of
I'm
it?
asking.
Okay, guys, anybody have problem with that? Should we go on with all right?
All those in favor?
Assuming she said
Aye.
it at the meeting.
Aye.
All right. Okay, approved.
Approved.
I didn't get the second to that motion, but okay.
Second was,
Jackie, did you
Did
second?
you second it or Jackie seconded?
It was
I
done.
second my own stuff.
But that vote was on Diane's amendment,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know who seconded Diane's amendment. It
Right.
certainly wasn't on this
I
side.
can't
No, we
second
didn't.
my own.
We're gonna approve the whole
Yeah, I
minute.
second
the
it.
No,
whole thing.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
so
you.
now we're going to vote on the total amended amendments with
Right.
Right.
David and Alan.
We're going to vote on the minutes with the
You
original
second?
amendments and Diane's new amendments.
I made the original amendment.
Is there a motion?
I moved already.
Second?
Second. Who
All those in
seconded?
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Approved.
Okay. Mr. President, I'm requesting that on the agenda that we would, after public comments, proceed to the early voting section of the meeting. I am requesting that we table wait times until October or when we have a final decision from the state board on the equipment.
I would like to have a report on
And
wait
to
times.
table over on future votes.
Okay, do
Okay.
one at a time.
Um,
Which one do you want me to move?
We already put off wait times from June, I believe, to September. And I would hope that at least we would get a report as to where things stand on wait times, even if it's just that nothing has happened since that time.
I was trying to expedite the meeting. I can give you a short explanation under wait time,
Okay, that would be great, thank you.
all right?
Okay.
And the future vote program follow-up is for next meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
And that was if there's an agreement.
Yeah, I spoke
Yes,
to,
yes, yes.
nothing is happening with the program until
Right.
after the board decides what to do.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Jim, could you
appreciate
please,
clarification, Jim.
could you please explain what that means to those of us who weren't part of that agreement? When
No,
you
I
say-
spoke-
when you say nothing is happening with the program until we decide what to do,
Well,
what
I
is-
spoke to Gilberto. He's waiting to see what the board does, if anything, regarding the program.
when does he normally recruit students for future
October,
votes?
it's October-ish.
told October.
Sometime in October.
And does that mean that he has to is he putting off any recruitment that he would otherwise be doing before we meet on October 21st?
No, so we are continuing to recruit election judges as we speak.
I'm not talking about election judges, I'm talking about future
We are
votes.
still in the high schools.
Okay.
We have to be in the high schools to recruit
Right.
future vote and
Right.
And the
and
grade
high
schools.
school.
Right.
Okay, so
We're not in grade schools.
Yeah,
We
so
do not go to grade schools.
6th grade?
Sixth grade is middle school.
Okay.
Okay, but he is in the process of meeting with the high school principals to set up times so that we can go in
Okay.
and do recruitment.
As we've done in the
He is
past. Right.
in the process of working with the student government associations in the high schools
Okay.
to set up meetings to meet with the student government representatives to begin the process of planning to get into the high schools. We are in the planning process.
So what if I understand what you're saying, the only thing that would be coming after October 21st are those meetings in the schools, and that's where we have to have a policy before he goes into the schools as to which students he is allowed to recruit. But as far as the steps that come
Margaret, is that
before that,
correct?
he is continuing that.
He is today he is meeting with the high school principals
Right.
to begin the process of planning when we can get into the high schools,
Right.
so that we can, our primary with the high schools is to get election judges.
Right.
But we will include recruiting future vote students.
Right.
We will he is also this week meeting with the student government associations so that we can also do outreach with whatever event the student government people would have, so that we can utilize students to recruit students. Having someone like myself sitting at a table in a high school
Right.
is not a positive experience. Recruiting a teen
Sure.
is what we're after.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
We are in the planning process.
Thank you.
Will these student teams be told citizenship is not a requirement for participation?
This is a planning, if they are a election judge, you have to be a registered voter, you must be a citizen of the United States.
Okay, and I'm talking about kids in the 6th grade, 6th, 7th,
Again.
8th, 9th, 10th.
No, they're not going to, there's no change to the program at this time.
There won't be a hold put on it, so they are allowing non-U.S. citizens.
We are in
participate.
the planning process of asking permission. We have to get permission to go into these high schools and middle schools before anything happens.
So there won't be any outreach before our next
No,
deliberative
I'm not going to
meeting?
say that, because there is outreach across
Okay,
the
that's what I'm
county.
trying to clear up. I'm asking you a simple question.
Yes,
Are
there
they
is
being told
No.
they can,
No, they are not.
are they going to just read the website and learn it?
There is no policy that at this time, the policy is that this is a program that's open to everyone.
That's my that's my issue. That's my concern.
We're going to discuss that in the next meeting.
But you told me with the proviso, we could get that we weren't going to be...
Nobody's being enrolled in the program right now, is that correct?
They're just going to.
Yes.
Right now, he's not recruiting future vote because the system's not ready to
Right.
recruit for future vote.
Great.
We have
That's
to
what he
roll
told
the
me, yeah.
system over. We haven't done that yet.
Great. And can we hold that until October? After the
I
next
roll
board
it when
meeting?
he tells me to roll it. So I take my direction from Margaret and Dr. Z.
Can we hold that until after the next meeting, because my understanding is if a student tries signing up now under the website, it says at the end there's a disclaimer, not available at this time. Can we keep it like that until?
Yes, we can keep the future vote judge module in hiatus until October,
Okay.
whatever day it is.
I'm talking about the student aides also.
But that's the future vote.
Okay.
The future vote is, future vote are the students, the middle school students.
Okay, but they're not judges. You just said judges.
No, I said that we are going into the high schools to speak with the principals and the student government associations to recruit election judges. To be an election judge, you need to be a citizen of the United States because you must be a registered
I
voter.
get that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking
about future vote.
Future vote is sixth graders, and it says you don't have to be a U.S. citizen.
And that's what you just said is going to be the program that is in suspension until the next board meeting.
All right, thank you.
And again, my question about that is, ordinarily, one board member cannot stop the board from implementing something that it has done for probably since I've been in high school. And what I'd like to understand is what exactly are we suspending, and why are we suspending it without a vote of the board? Because there are laws and rules that govern when and how citizenship status can be taken into consideration in the distribution of public benefits. And in this case, the opportunity to volunteer with us is in that category.
But the future vote module is not functioning right now.
They're not suspending it because of us.
Okay.
And this will all be discussed and decided by the board.
In October.
Right.
In October.
I'm happy with that.
They
Okay.
become too complicated then.
Okay.
Don't look at me.
Okay.
I'm supporting the status quo here.
Well,
Okay.
That's not terribly
All right,
that's not terribly complicated.
We're going to go to public comment?
sometimes
Yes,
that's a
sir.
Okay,
problem.
go.
Okay.
Move on.
Okay,
So
the
we
first,
Thank you.
We do have some
Well, I have a
individuals.
question before that. I have a question about the change to the agenda. And am I correct that I heard that we have not gotten money for the 12?
Well, that's going to be our next topic, after public comments.
public comments.
Take it off the agenda. We don't need the public comment.
Public comments.
That'll be over
We
our
have
objection.
had citizens sign up to speak. So,
So we
Mr.
have-
President, how do you want to proceed? Do you
Yeah.
want the first speaker?
How many
Yeah,
do you
and
have?
I want to thank everybody for coming and appreciate their time. Yeah, who's ever signed up, and if anybody after that wants to speak, they can speak.
So we do have
We
some
have a time
individual-
limit of 3 minutes to remind
Is it
everybody.
still-
Still, is
So
it
we-
still,
I don't
is it
wanna
still
keep it just
an open
going.
issue? If we haven't gotten the money,
Oh,
why are we talking about it if we can't have it?
I don't know what people are going to say. They signed up for public comment.
Mr. President, we do have some individuals who requested to address the board in advance. First, we have Larry Halloran.
Yeah, everybody who
Please
speaks,
have a seat right
join us. Thanks, Larry.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. I want to address specifically the recommendation regarding the Potomac Community Center early voting, so EV10. It's found on
I don't know.
slide 36 of your
We can
presentation.
share.
And it contains a recommendation to fix a parking constraint that prohibiting electioneers from using the center lot and set up a shuttle for election workers. I encourage you, I implore you not to adopt that recommendation. It would have no discernible, statistically significant effect on voters' parking experience at that place. Against the demand by voters, by electioneers, by people attending center programs, by daycare families and dropping off their kids, and by the rideshare program that operates out of the back. Prohibiting 20 of us from parking there would have no discernible effect on the voters' experience. They'd never see it. But it would have a pretty serious effect on those who expect to run that center 12 to 14 hours a day, having to shuttle up Falls Road someplace. Or, God forbid, if the shuttle wasn't there, someone decided to walk up Falls Road in the dark at night. A treacherous place. The shuttle proposal has been tried in 2016. It didn't work. It was just impractical. The board often dispatches workers in the course of the day as demand or as workers become available. And so would the shuttle be sitting idly waiting for those persons, or will those people have to wait for wait for the shuttle to show up and add more traffic to Falls Road? I just don't think it would work. And I think the proposal as written would be utterly unenforceable. Particularly with regard to election workers, by what authority would the board prohibit Montgomery County citizens from full, unrestricted access to the use of a public facility? I don't see how that happens. And who would enforce this restriction, even if you thought you could? And in the likely event it worked, as regard to electioneers, I think the board could be accused of putting a thumb on the partisan scale when workers from one party or another saw their opponents getting better parking that day. I mean, I think you open yourself up there to a bad set of optics. So in the end, I submitted enforcing against electioneers would be impossible. Running the proposal only effective against the election workers you need there to run the place effectively. And I think that proposed solution says something the board might not want to say about how it views election workers as essential parts of this process. That we're not secondary, we're not to be exiled off someplace, that we're needed there and should be. So and finally, I think adopting the organization would act as a powerful disincentive to recruiting and maintaining qualified workers at EV10. It's just make it an already complicated and stressful situation more complicated and more stressful, which I don't think you need. The board selected the Potomac site and should have considered parking for election workers as a necessary cost of doing business there. And if the board is not willing to pay that cost, I think you shouldn't be doing business there, period. There is a solution that has worked in the past that we have been asked and complied to park in the back in the gravel lot next to the tennis courts. And the police officer there told me that was not a bad solution because it kept voters from backing in and out of that cul-de-sac and creating even more traffic problems. So we're consigned to that back cul-de-sac. It's not a problem for voters in and out who otherwise traverse a circle around the facility to see in the map there. So I think that's the easy answer, and I hope you would take yes for an answer and adopt it that way. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry.
Next, Mr. President, we have Daniel Karoma.
Okay. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. President, member of the Board of Montgomery County Board of Election, my name is Daniel Karoma. I'm a long-term resident of White Oak. A few years ago, I brought to light some of the challenges residents of White Oak were facing as a result of not having an early voting site in our neighborhood. Two of the major challenges are, first one is access to transportation during early voting weekends, and the second one is the long wait at the Silver Spring Civic Building. The Silver Spring Civic Building is 4.5 miles away from White Oak, but it's the county's, one of the county's most busiest voting sites. Praisner, which is our other voting site, is 5.6 miles from White Oak, but there are no bus access during the weekend. The recent election data, which you have, has shown that there's an increased wait time now at both locations. And so, in your good judgment and wisdom, part of your recommendation is to make sure that the White Oak Rec Center is an early voting site, which will tremendously make it possible for residents of White Oak to be able to vote. Again, I ask that you go along with that recommendation and choose the White Oak Rec Center as the early voting site in the upcoming elections, both primary and general elections. But also, this is something that would really send a strong message. Can you imagine, as I say, if you approve a site in a community that does not have access to bus one site, and it takes too long for the other. In fact, the back of my testimony, I provided a map. And if you look at the map, the one at the bottom, it shows you where the bus stop on the weekends. And people have to walk for 3 miles for them to go to the early voting sites. This will send a strong message to other counties and Board of Elections who are trying to reduce precinct locations, moving early voting locations from minority neighborhoods, or cutting days from their early voting days in order to suppress the black and minority votes. The message you will send is to say in Montgomery County, voting is not a partisan issue. So I ask that you again you choose White Oak as that site. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. President, we have Ms. Diana Conway. Is she here?
Join us, Diana. Welcome.
My printer is broken and my IT guy is still in Massachusetts, so forgive me. You have the copies by email. My name is Diana Conway. I'm here on behalf of the Women's Democratic Club of Montgomery County. And on behalf of our 700 members, we're here to ask you to open the White Oak site and offer relief to the very overcrowded and untenable conditions under which people had to vote in the last cycle. The record from November is clear. We had unacceptably long lines, many voters just leaving in frustration without having voted. This board cannot allow that to happen again. The White Oak site is indispensable, especially given the expected increase in turnout for this cycle and the low rate of car ownership. It is incumbent on this body to give voters a way to exercise their franchise without creating problems for handicapped or disabled voters, for parents who need to pick up from childcare, for workers who are on a clock, and for people who do not have transportation. Last November saw long lines along the US 29 and New Hampshire Avenue corridors with people waiting an hour, 2 hours, or more, and leaving without voting. This board has an obligation to meet the demand from our voters. I urge you to take up the charge. I urge you to open the White Oak site. Thank you for considering the views of the Women's Democratic Club of Montgomery County.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. President, we have Ms. Maria Peña Faustino.
Welcome, Maria.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for all you do at this board. I come here before asking you to consider voting no to a new general election site. I am a supporter of the slogan, every vote counts. But this marvelous Constitution grants us that. But I'm also fiscal conservative, and I'm worried about spending. It's a correction in my testimony. I put 125,000. It's 120,000. I understand. To open a site for it, especially for the general elections. I understand if we had a site during the primaries, because the Democrat Party has many candidates to choose from. So you will want it to pick the candidate you want. So I can imagine the urgency from every Democrat voter to go to the vote and vote in the primary, because if you candidate, you want to make sure that your voice is here. So primaries will make a little more sense to have an election of the general election when you only have two candidates. And 90% of the time, we know that always a Democrat candidate has won. So the urgency for the general election, I don't see it. Spending $120,000, being conservative, fiscal conservative, I think it hampers the system. So if anything, if we can add more polling booths in the places that are already open. I am Colombian, and in Colombia, election happens only on a Sunday, and our numbers are bigger than the United States voters. If anything, we should put this money in the millennials that are the ones that vote the least. You know, the 18 to 35 years are people that don't really vote. Us, everybody here more or less look the same age. To expect somebody, excuse me, you're younger than me, but anyway, we 60% we vote. That's about what we vote. But we need that money to go into millennials and get an outreach program or something like that. So we also have the vote ratings give us a warning. They worry about us that we are not going to lose the A+ voting that we have. We have a warning, because we are not using our taxpayers' money the right way. So $120,000, if we want to pay with the bond ratings, then what are we going to do? We're going to pay more taxes to make up for the programs, because if we have to pay more interest in the money that we borrow, so that's going to hurt our whole ratings. And if we have money available, why then don't use it for, like, say, homeless? I mean, if $120,000 will go a long way for homeless people. Or what about lunches for children, or vaccinations, or why not manna foods? I mean, we can go on and on, all the things that we can do with our money. I respectfully ask you, please vote no for this. If you are fiscally responsible, and if you think that we can put booths every other places, and in my country, people walk miles, to show your election. Here we do so easy for everyone, and still our numbers of voting are pretty slim compared to other places. So I say please respectfully say no, and that's my testimony.
Thank you, Monique.
Thank you. Next, Mr. President, we have Robin Riley.
Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Doctor.
My name is Robin Riley, and I'm the director for the Department of Recreation, and I'm here to talk to you about the use of the new Wheaton Rec Center and Library, which is a fantastic building. If you haven't been, I implore you to come.
It is a fantastic building. I have been.
Speak louder. Sure, I will. I would ask that you consider using the social hall as opposed to the gymnasium for the elections, so for a couple different reasons. Primarily because the gymnasium has a lot of challenges around it, including power, landlines, which are not existent inside the facility, inside the gym itself, but also the security risk. It has an elevated track above, so we would actually have to close our fitness room and that track, as well as the gymnasium for that length of time for early voting. Which is also a second reason is, for me, is that building is seeing record numbers of usage by young people after school. Our elected officials expanded our hours for that site because they wanted safe places for kids to come, and our gymnasium is packed, both after school, Friday nights and Saturday nights until 11. And so the double risk for us is those kids being outside, not being able to participate in a program inside the gymnasium while the social hall sits empty. So the social hall is on the second floor, but it's 32,000 square feet.
3,200 square feet.
Sorry, 3,200 square feet. Good call. The whole building.
If it were 32,000 square feet, there would be no controversy.
It would be the library. It would be the entire library. Well, actually, the library is only 22,000 square feet. So I hope you can take that into consideration, and I thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just express first thanks for coming.
Sure.
And thanks for putting together a fabulous center.
Yes.
But you're going to hear a lot of people talk today, and we are concerned that the eastern part of the county in the past has had lines and issues. The gym is much bigger and can accommodate many more people. And I'm told that you can secure that whole area, even the top, in terms of a security problem. The issue is, to me personally, voting comes before any other activity. I mean, we really want to make it more accessible to the people on the eastern part of the county. And that facility, the difference between the size of the gym and the social is problematic.
Okay, can I just add to your question? I went for the day of the opening. It's a beautiful facility. If you could also address why you think that the fitness center would have to be closed, because what I observed was that clearly the track would allow people to peer over and perhaps see how people are voting, which I can understand is a problem. But the fitness center, if the door between the fitness center and the track were closed, it appears that it does not have a view of where people are voting.
It does have a view. It may not be clear as concise as it would be on the track itself, but currently that door does not lock. So it doesn't mean it couldn't. I'm not advocating we couldn't put a lock on it, but right now it doesn't have one because it's a component of the fitness room. It's a component of the gym pass to be able to use that track and walk. So it's certainly something that's achievable, but you can see out the window of the gym, the fitness room, onto the gymnasium below. Is it clear and concise? No. You'd have to be Superman and have really kryptonite vision.
And we could cover the windows.
You could, yes, if you so choose to do so.
Now you say there's an electrical issue. Can that be fixed?
If somebody wants to pay for all the power to be run into the gymnasium and run landlines, because there currently aren't any.
Any idea what the cost of that is?
I do not.
Okay.
I went with David. It's a gorgeous facility. We looked at the electrical outlets in the gym. They're about every 12 or 15 feet.
The gym is much.
Not behind the bleachers. On the other side, there's none. You know where the bleachers are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Opposite the bleachers
There are-
Opposite, on one side there is, the other side there
You're
is.
saying that there are not plugs behind the bleachers?
Correct.
But then past the bleachers or the same side as the bleachers, there are one or two outlets over there.
Yeah, I couldn't be concise on where they are.
Yeah.
But I just
Yeah.
know walking it will be a challenge to run electrical lines and landlines in that space. That somebody can.
A lot of people.
Okay.
While,
We have to tell them today.
are you staying or leaving? 'Cause
I will do whatever you ask me to do.
okay.
Yeah.
In order so that you can leave, let me ask you a question now about something
Sure.
you didn't come to speak to us about, which
Sure.
is the Praisner Center.
Yes.
We were informed that there is some kind of an issue with the elevator so that relating to the gym at the Praisner Center, which struck me as being odd. Yes, exactly, because I would think that the senior citizens who are at the Praisner Center would need that elevator. So my question is whether there are ADA issues with the elevator at Praisner.
It's not an elevator, it's a lift. So it's met by different standards, I'm told, for qualified ADA. Does it work? Does it go down 2 steps? Yes. Does it functionally have issues at times, mechanical issues? Yes. Does it meet all ADA code? I was told this morning it does not. Is there a path?
You were told by whom?
DFM, our facility maintenance team. I don't maintain any buildings.
Okay.
Our facilities team does. I talked to Steve, who's with the DFM, and he's the ADA coordinator.
Okay.
He told me he does not believe it currently meets code for ADA. However,
Okay.
he told me because there's a path of travel to get to the gym, it meets the qualification of ADA.
So what's the path of travel?
It's basically
A ramp?
outside
Uh-huh.
and around the corner and to the side of the entrance.
So there is an ADA compliant way to get there, but the lift is not ADA compliant.
That's what he reported to me this morning. Correct.
You know, I think we have so many people here to talk. Maybe, can we take this off meeting?
I'm happy to
and
come back.
revisit it?
Well, only if we're not deciding today whether we're going to be in the gym or the social hall at Praisner.
Well,
No, we have to make that decision today because the paperwork has to go into the state board.
Right. So I mean, that's why I felt like it was. You
The
know,
elevator does not meet the State Board of Elections ADA requirements. It has to be 36 inches.
I'm sorry. Are you talking about the elevator or the lift?
The lift at Praisner.
Lift.
It is not
The
36
lift.
inches.
It
Can
has
that-
to be
can-
36 inches wide.
Can the room in the site be amended to the state board?
No.
I mean, if we tell them today, Wheaton Social Hall, but it turns out that we can do, for a reasonable price, the fix-up to use the gym, can't we just amend that?
He's talking about different
no,
facilities.
no. But he's asking a question that relates to both.
I need to call, if you want me to go call Nikki, the
Yes.
State Board, and ask that question.
Or someone can.
We don't know, we don't know how much it's gonna cost
No.
additionally now to try to wire up the gym.
No, I know, that's one of the things I'd like to find out.
Already then.
So we can
move on.
we
and
can
be
move on,
able
yeah.
to talk about it.
Robin,
Thank
thanks.
you.
But you see our concern?
Absolutely.
We want more space.
I live in these counties.
There you go.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
What?
we have someone else who would like to address the board.
Sure.
We have Barbara Sanders.
Barbara? League of Women Voters? Thank you.
Barbara, thank you for the calendar.
Yes.
As the Montgomery County League of Women Voters Liaison to the board, we first wanted to express our thanks for opening this to the public about the selection process, since it was thought that people would not respond, and also for the detailed analysis that was available on the website. We are strongly supportive of continuing the 11 previously utilized with the substitution of the Wheaton Community Rec Center. It's always a preference to avoid voter confusion and keep things in the same locations when possible. If the County Council continues its commitment to support the full complement of state-approved centers, we encourage the board to add another center. We recognize the fiscal issues that are involved. In terms of how to select a new center, we don't put priorities on any particular center. We do recognize that you've covered 98% of the county. We really appreciate that for reaching voters. But there are sections that are right at the edges of that 5 miles, and I will say East County is one of those. It's also important that the access for transportation be not just during the rush hours, but be available on weekends and evenings. There are your map behind you that has the green for the voters that were already involved in early voting. The darker the green, the more involved they were. And I would suggest that you look to serve the people that are already engaged in early voting. And again, that actually happens on the east side of the county. Commuter routes, job centers, daytime populations that are at home, and community sites frequented on weekends are another way of justifying which locations to serve. And there is now a racial equity and social justice aspect to most of the decisions being made in the county. We're still forming how we're doing it, but we would suggest that that also work into your decisions. Generally, there's a suggestion there for early voting sites. We just wanted at this time to say education on the difference between who is served at a center in early voting versus as a precinct needs to be emphasized, and I would suggest that maps be posted as to who would be the easiest voters at that site if it is used as a precinct. It's also one possibility of not adding sites that are used as precincts to avoid that confusion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Mr. President, we also have Ms. Patricia Finetti.
Pat? Welcome, Pat.
My name is Pat Finati. I live in Damascus, and I'm really against adding another early voting center. I'm very concerned about it. My forefathers traveled miles to go see someplace on election day, and I don't understand why, with all the ability with transportation and everything, people can't do that. But understanding that some people may have some need for early voting, the numbers of days that we have it, the numbers of places that we have it, it makes it very difficult to follow, to get the people to work there, to get the people to work outside the polls, to get people to legitimize or be poll watching. It's just too many days, too many times. And I think because it's so confusing and so much that it is it becomes open to voter fraud. It's very easily opened up voter fraud. I can go from one voting center to another and use different names, and with no voter ID, there's no way we can tell that. I think I would be very much more in favor of early voting if we had voter ID. And then my other concern about this is the cost already. Back to voter ID. The State Board of Elections has not yet released the names of the people who voted in early voting. And we don't have, so I don't know who voted then, who voted at that time. So that's a big concern for me, because I'm very concerned about voter fraud. And then the other issue is cost, putting other costs. I'm not quite sure if it's $150 a day and $20 people at a site. That's $288,000. You'll be adding $24,000 to the constant. I'm not really sure of the numbers, so I don't know how much you're paying and how many people you have at the vote sites, but it's a lot of money. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
Next, Mr. President, we have trying to qualify. Fran Rothstein, would you like to address the board?
Welcome, Fran.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
Good seeing you.
I am here as immediate past president of the Women's Democratic Club, and I won't echo what Diana Conway, the current president, has said. I just want to add a couple of things. One is, this is not the first time or the second time that WDC has been involved in trying to expand early voting sites. We did that. We we're very active in trying to keep Praisner open and Leland open. This seems to be right in line with those efforts. I know that we all share, regardless of party, a commitment to making it possible and easy for every eligible voter to vote. And I think having the East County site at the East County Rec Center helps to do that. I live on the border between Silver Spring and Tacoma Park. I vote at the Silver Spring Civic Center. I can tell you the lines can get very long there. We are way over the 8-minute average nationwide. And if people have the opportunity to vote a little closer to home and to vote somewhere where it is easier for them to access, I think we need to provide that. We have the opportunity for a 12th center, and we strongly recommend that that center be the East County Rec Center. I also want to echo two things that the League of Women Voters testimony emphasized. One is that the county is moving toward a racial equity and social justice policy. My understanding is that's going to be coming out shortly. And looking at the demographics, I think the worst thing we can do as a county is, in reality or in appearance, to seem to be denying or putting barriers up to people of color and to more recent immigrants who have become citizens. I think we want to make it easy. I think we want them to have a good experience, and we want to maximize their opportunity for voting. I've forgotten now the other thing she said that I wanted to emphasize, but it is an American value. You have wonderful posters up. You have this great poster, let everyone know how opinionated you are. We want to hear from new immigrants who have become citizens. We want to hear from people of color. We want to hear from people who perhaps don't have a car. And my understanding is that 35% of the people who would be served by that East County Rec Center do not have a car. The bus rapid transit up 29 is not there yet, and it's difficult for people to get around the county by bus. I currently can't drive because of my status as a person with a temporary disability, and let me tell you, I'm dependent on my friends to get me places. I can't even take a Lyft or an Uber because they won't open the door and put on my seatbelt. So whether it's people with disabilities or people of color or people of low income or people who are recent citizens, it is our responsibility to make voting as easy for them as possible. I recognize the problems that people have raised about the cost, about the difficulty of getting judges, about the security. I think that we are a smart enough county that we can solve that, and I agree with you that voting is job one. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, no one else has identified to speak in advance on the sign-in sheet.
Lisa? Jim?
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah, people that take their time to come, if you want to speak.
That
The rest of the board's going to yell at me, but welcome.
I won't.
Thank you. Real quick and to the point. Jim Epstein, potential center manager, I think, at the Wheaton Center, and we're excited to be at the center. The only concern or question that I have is in moving to the second floor, the ADA concerns. I believe there's really only one elevator there. We get a lot and at that center, so it's the late night issues, it's the staffing, late night, and it's the ADA concerns. I understand if there's no power on the first level, well, there's not much we can do there, but I am concerned about the second level utilization and what impact that will have, and especially that access. If they're going to have, if potential voters for early voting are going to have access to the building regardless throughout the early voting hours, then we won't be responsible for staffing whatever that accessible entrance is. But in the past, that's not been the case, and we've been responsible for letting people in to wherever the facility is. So if there's an issue getting to the second level during early voting hours, then that's a concern that I think we just need to address and figure out how to answer.
How about the space in the social?
Well, it's smaller, obviously, but the gym is probably too big. So, but if there's no power, there's no power unless you're going to spend
No one
money
has said
to
that
put
there's
power in.
no power. The question
Or
is
minimal
whether
power.
there's sufficient.
And I'm not an expert on that. We know what is necessary in there. And I would also assume that, as you'll note in some of the handouts, the utilization of Wheaton from 14 to 18 doubled, and it will increase again. It's been low on the totem pole, but it will increase again because we have a new building and the desire to be there. So in that planning, I think we just need to consider how to handle that.
So you support which part of it?
Well, I'm concerned about how those that need ADA access to the voting center will get in there and what impact that will have. And what impact that will have on the people that are staffing the facility, because if we have to run down there and open it up each time, and we're not going to have enough judges in the first place, it becomes an issue. So I just want to raise those logistic issues.
Against using the location, period.
No, that would not be what I'm saying.
Okay, so I'm just asking you, are you supporting the gym or the thing? I'm confused which level is which when you're talking about this in the
The
letter.
gym is on the first floor.
So you are arguing, you're supporting...
I'm
using
raising
which
an issue that I
location?
believe the board needs to address if you're going to use the second floor in this new facility.
And that is...
Social hall.
The ADA, the
social
social hall is on the
Thank
second
you.
level. Right,
Thank
if you
you.
don't know the facility, I'm sorry.
Thank
That's
you.
it, yes. The
Thank
social
you.
hall is on the second level. The gym is on the first level.
And thanks for being a manager.
Well, that's yet to be determined, but I believe
In
so.
the past.
Thank you.
In the past.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So we can move up. Yeah, we already put it.
The agenda?
Yeah, what I do with it?
I think this is it. Right there.
Purposely.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so
Mr. President, Chris, and she's going to address the Wheaton and Fraser gym issues.
Oh, Chris?
She has a PowerPoint.
Mr. President, I'd just like to make an announcement to make sure everyone has signed in to the sign-in sheet. Yes? Everyone? Thank you.
Yes, you did.
now what is it? This PowerPoint is what?
It's addressing the, excuse me. It's really important for our staff to be able to record the minutes, not to have individuals talking over one another. So, because it makes it very, very difficult to transcribe the minutes. So, just for the record, early voting media release went out August 6th, and we sent it out again on September 12th. The letter to the county executive and the council regarding position on funding. The 12th Early Voting Center went out August 1st. I distributed a letter from the county executive for the board members. We have, Chris is going to talk about the Wheaton Recreation Center and the staff recommendation to use the social hall and classrooms, primarily for security reasons, but some electrical issues. And the Maryland Praisner Gym is not ADA accessible according to these reports. Specifically, the elevator does not meet the ADA requirements. So that's where we're at. Praisner is a facility that is supposed to be replaced someday, or refreshed, I guess is the right word.
Did Kevin get an
Chris?
answer?
I'm not. I called Nikki and left a message and asked her, I sent her a text message for her to check the voicemail.
Okay.
Chris?
Right, as Margaret mentioned, we had taken 2 visits this past week or so to review some of the early voting sites, Praisner, Maryland Praisner, and Wheaton. This last week was really actually the first week we had the opportunity to see the Wheaton location. But we went back to review our options at Praisner. So we're going to start with Praisner. Janet? Which advance? Okay. So Marilyn Praisner is the first one here. The aerial and the entrance and the handicap accessible parking lots are to the right of, and we will set up some handicap on the circle as well as in below the parking area across from the door. When we went out to look at the accessibility and the size of rooms, this is the entrance. I will mention that the yellow line is level to the asphalt right there. So all the way across the front of the entrance, we have accessibility. This is the elevator, the lift. The elevator door or lift door is an opening of 32 inches. We are required to have an opening of at least 36 inches to be compliant.
Is that because it's wheelchair?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. The elevator car or cab is 42 by 46. The regular size cab is 51 by 60 some. That gives the person in the wheelchair an opportunity to pull in, turn around, and be able to reach the controls to operate the lift or the cab. The option that we have right now is not ADA compliant.
And it never has been, but we've been using the place?
We use the social hall.
We use the social hall where there is not the need to use the elevator because the gymnasium has been suggested. We would have to go down about a half of a level in order to get to the gymnasium.
Gymnasium is down steps?
Down steps. We have a photo.
Okay. Do you have a photo from the entrance of the building?
We're going.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're
Okay.
going.
Okay.
This is from the lower level. So we've got 4 and 4. We have 8 steps that we need to come down. And then the lift or elevator is right next door. This leads us into the corridor of the gymnasium.
Is that the social hall on the left there?
No, the social hall is up and across the lobby on the other end of the
Okay.
building.
Oh, I know the building. Okay, thank you.
This is the social hall. It's 31, almost 3,200 feet. What we have hoped to do, what we're suggesting to do right across the hall from the social hall is this training, or what they call a classroom. It's 500 square feet. We can use that as our secondary room for provisional voting. There would be no provisional voting or activity in the social hall. All of the provisional voting would take place in this room.
How far is it from the other one?
Right across the hall. Immediate. The 2 doors are almost adjacent to each other. The door that would exit the social hall goes right across to the classroom door. And that is actually our suggestion for Praisner. I do believe that we can make it work. I think it has worked in the past. Yes, there were some things noted on election day, 2018. I don't think that was really a spatial issue. It potentially became a spatial issue, but I believe the social hall will meet our standards. We'll be able to use it as we've done in the past with the classroom, taking up one of the functions, the provisional voting. Wheaton, like I said, we hadn't had an opportunity to review this building at all, but it is a gorgeous building. I don't know how many of you were there when it opened, but Wheaton should be very happy. And I agree with Mr. Epstein that because of the building and its location, yes, we're going to see the numbers grow. The interest is there. The accessibility is there. We will have a higher voter turnout, I believe, at Wheaton than we have had in the past. Wheaton has basically fallen in the middle as far as turnout all along, but I believe we'll see a jump this particular election. And this is just a rendition from the architect of the layout of the property. And the main entrance is what I consider to the back of the building, but it is the accessible, and it is where the parking is, and I expect most people to come in that way. The Georgia entrance would be a pedestrian entrance, people walking. They had some bike stands out there. We might have some people with bicycles that would come in that door, and then ride-on stops right at the corner of Arcola and Georgia. So we'll have people who are using public transit will want that Georgia entrance, but I anticipate most of our activity will be at the circle as far as entering the building. This is the front of the building, and where we were talking about, that's probably where our pedestrian traffic will happen. This shows the location of the building with public transit. We have ride-on, and we have two entrances, the one that we consider pedestrian and then the one that accommodates people who are driving and need parking. It's on Georgia and Arcola. We're about a mile point one from the Glenmont Metro, and we're less than a mile from the Wheaton Metro. This is the entrance that we anticipate will be the busiest, and it is compliant. Another entrance from Georgia. Our parking, the front, what we're calling the front lot, has 4 handicap plus 6 general spaces. The side lot, which is along the playground area or the park area, it has 4 handicap spaces plus 56 regular. Now the parking garage has 8 handicap spaces and 162 approximately of regular
unpaid?
parking.
Is that paid, unpaid?
It's open
Yes.
to the public. It is
Okay.
not paid. Total parking is 240 spaces. This is the ramp that if you're down below near where the playground is, you could use the ramp if you had special needs. This is the stairway into the parking lot from that door that I say will probably be the door that's frequented by voters. But there are elevators in the garage and then up near the stairway that would take you from the garage up to the main level where you would enter. It enters an exterior area, but the door is right to our right as you come off the elevator.
Those elevators have the extra 4 inches?
These elevators are totally compliant.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The red on this is the entrance. This is an artist rendition of the building. The red that you see by the door is our proposed no electioneering zone. And then we have a photo with the signs. That's what no electioneering would look like at that door. This
Can
is...
I ask quickly? You pointed to multiple entrances.
One of those, the entrance or the elevators?
Well, you mentioned,
you
showed us
two
two entrances.
They're on 2 sides of the building.
Mm-hmm.
One faces Georgia Avenue. That would be basically pedestrian traffic or traffic from public transit, or like I mentioned, bicyclers might use that entrance.
Okay, yeah.
The entrance that you saw that was on a circle, that is the entrance that we believe. I don't know if Robin would say what she's noticed as far as traffic coming in and out of the building, but we perceive that the entrance on the circle will be the entrance that most of our voters will access the building.
So which will be the electioneering zone?
It's going to be one of my questions. You vote?
I would imagine that you will suggest that we have no electioneering on both sides of the building.
Well, are we expected to monitor the board 2 two locations where people are entering, there is always a question at 8 o'clock. If people are in line, you have to make sure the last person at 8 o'clock is the last one who's going to vote. Are we at this location going to be tasked with monitoring separate entrances, which to my understanding is unusual?
It's the difference between into the voting room and into the building. She's talking about entrance into the building. She's not talking about entrance to the voting.
Anyone who's standing in line at 8 o'clock will receive last voter sign, and they get to vote.
But
It
my
doesn't
question,
make
I
any
know,
difference.
that's what I just
It
said.
doesn't make any difference where they're standing.
How many lines there are that we need to do that to?
Ms. Dillon, we have election judges that will be tasked to go out and monitor the end of that line with, as Ms. Jurgensen said, a card that will be given. It's a place card.
Right. My question simply is, are there multiple lines that will be going in to vote? Multiple entrances. It's a simple question.
Yes, there will be two different entrances at the Wheaton location, just as there are two separate locations for the Activity Center at Fort Park, just as there's two separate locations for the EOB. It's something that the object is the center manager is told at 8 o'clock, go send your folks, whoever you've designated, with the I'm the last voter at 8 o'clock. They hand it to that person, they hand it to that person, and that's the last voter that votes.
Okay, so there will be electioneering zones at multiple entrances at this location.
At two entrances.
Okay, that's all I asked.
The square footage on this room is 3,100, or approximately 3,100 square feet. It does have adequate electricity. At the end of the building, there is a kitchen, which can serve for break room. It can serve for election judges to be able to heat food or to refrigerate food. This area is at the end of the social hall, and we are asking that we reserve that area, and we will be set through those windows. You can look into the polling room. Doesn't show up on here. But the glass on the right-hand side is looking into the polling room. We're proposing that this area be our provisional area, as we're doing at Fraser.
So in the hallway?
Yes. It is a hallway, Mr. Naaman, but it is to the end of the hallway. There's no traffic through there, and we would ask that that area be
cordoned off?
Yeah, be part of what we're using.
But you would then cordon off any egress and exit so that it's a secure provisional area,
Yes.
correct?
We wouldn't be having it traffic through there, public traffic.
You have a door over there.
That's an emergency exit. Okay?
So people cannot come up those stairs from the level below?
No, they cannot. There's signs on there that says it's for emergency use only. So you have the push bars to go out in case of fire or any emergency. Okay? These are the elevators. There are two of them. They're right at, you come out into a reception area and turn to the right to the social hall.
And they're the right width and length?
Yes,
and breadth?
they are compliant. There's the stairway. And the social hall is just right above the stairs. And this is the hallway. Down at the end of the hallway, there is the opening that I am proposing that we use for provisional voting. This door here, there's 3 doors along this corridor. They all go into the social hall. I'm proposing that we use the meet-up door, as it's labeled, as our entrance, and then there's a circle through the polling area, and they would come out one of the lower doors.
Does the provisional area have and need electricity?
No. It doesn't need electricity, and honestly, I did not check I am sorry, I can figure that out, but we don't need electricity to do provisional voting. Okay? And this is a better picture of the entrance, that meetup. They're double doors, they would go in there, we would conduct the voting, and then they would circle out into one of the other doorways and come back the hall to exit.
Just stop for a sec. It does have lights in there. When you say it doesn't have any electricity.
It has ceiling lights.
Yeah, it has it's lit.
Yes, but
Thank
it does.
you. Okay.
I have not checked for sockets because I wasn't worried about sockets. I knew that we wouldn't be putting any equipment in that area.
In the provisional area.
In the provisional area.
But you have checked for the electricity in the social hall.
Yes, and I've checked
The sockets in the social hall.
I've checked all the sockets. They're all operable, and we have adequate electricity.
How many sockets do you need?
How many sockets do I need?
Right.
Yeah, it does depend on how much equipment. Say if I had, or if we had, 4 scanners in there, we would need multiple sockets for scanners. We need sockets for our EPDs. And
There'll be
really
anywhere
depends.
from 12, okay, just, I don't have those numbers. There will be anywhere from 12 to 15 poll books because, as always, we have same-day voter registration. Additionally, for the, we requested additional equipment. There will be 4 to 5 scanners. There will be 5 ballot marking devices, and then there will be 2 ADA units. So all of those require electrical.
I guess I'm still trying to understand, though, since we're saying that there's an electrical issue with the gym,
yes,
and that there's not an electrical issue with the social hall. Just trying to understand what the social hall has that the gym doesn't. You know, I mean, how many sockets do we think are necessary that, or if you didn't have additional electricity, do you use extension cords? Do you et cetera?
What would happen in the gymnasium, because it is a huge area,
Yes.
We would be stretching cords across expanses to access electricity. In
Right.
this room, we would not have that problem.
Right, but stretching cords across the expanses
We have-
doesn't sound like a disqualifier. It just sounds
Mr.
like
Mr. President, I'd like to have Janet comment on using extension cords with the scanners.
Sure.
You can't use extension cords with the scanners. That's a state regulation, has to be plugged directly into the wall.
And is that what we're doing in the other gymnasiums in which we are?
Yes.
So we have sufficient plugs in Damascus and Bethesda
Everywhere.
and Potomac.
Yep.
We have more plugs there than we have in Wheaton,
Potomac-
even though Wheaton is brand new.
Potomac gives us a challenge, but we do make sure all the scanners are on one plug, on their separate plugs. But the poll books, because they're on the other side of the room, there is one plug over there and we have to make it work.
What does that mean?
We run a lot of extension cords, but it's
Okay.
against the wall, so it's not dangerous to the voters
Okay.
because it's behind the table.
How is that different than Wheaton?
Because I haven't seen Wheaton, but if it's on one side of the room, that's going to be an issue.
Well, but it sounds like it's the same thing in Potomac.
No,
It sounds like
so Potomac has it on both sides of the room. It's on this side, and
you're
there's
saying
some
you have
around
the
the room.
scanners on one side and
And
the
the
poll
poll
books on the other.
side.
Um,
That will be an issue.
All right, but Wheaton does have plugs at one end of the gym on one side and on the other side a different part of the gym.
I don't know what it looks like.
The gymnasium is 11,400 feet,
Right.
square feet.
Right.
So that means that the sockets are spread out.
Right.
So that if we had a scanner area, maybe 2 or 3 close together so that we could direct traffic to the scanner, we wouldn't be able to do that. Scanners would be spaced out amongst the whole room in order to have an individual socket. Shall we go on?
Please.
This is the entrance area, again, the elevators, and down in your right-hand corner is the stairwell. And that is our presentation for
Thank you.
those two.
Do you have pictures
And-
of the gym?
And,
No, I do not. I have photos. I can certainly send you photos, Mr. Banoff, if you would like.
may I just, there's one more item. The city of Gaithersburg, I did get a response from Tony Tomasello, and the city of Gaithersburg will allow us to use the gym on the Wednesday and Thursday of the last 2 days of the early voting during the primary election, and the gym will be made available for the entire general election. So we did get that confirmed.
That's
But
the one you
first
have to move the
Monday, yes, we will have to move the equipment. But, okay, so I just wanted that. There wasn't, when I sent out my notes, there wasn't clarification from Mr. Tomasello.
I had a question about the ADA compliant entrance at Praisner.
Yes.
It is around the side of the building?
It is at the end of the building, yes.
Is it at the same end as the gymnasium?
Yes. It is a locked door with a doorbell. So if someone would like to access the gymnasium or the rec center who has special needs, they would pull up to that door and ring the doorbell and then wait for access. Is there anything further?
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Well done.
Okay,
Yes.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I just wanted to add that at 2:25, I distributed this letter from the county executive with regards to his thoughts on funding a early voting site, 12th early voting site.
Yeah, for the record, I think we got 3 letters today. We got a letter from 7 of the 9 councilmen supporting White Oak as a 12th early voting site. And then we got a letter from...
The executive?
No.
Mark Corman?
Yeah, Mark Corman, who's the chair of the Montgomery County delegation to the Assembly, to the House of Delegates, supporting White Oak. And then we have a letter from the county executive, which I'd like to read into the record, because we asked the county executive, because even though we're appointed by the governor, all of us are appointed by the governor and approved by the state senate, Montgomery County pays our bills. And we asked Mark Elrich for his opinion as to whether he would fund early voting sites for this election cycle, and I'll read the letter we just got. Dear Chair Shalik, turnout is expected to be high for the 2020 general election. Therefore, I support adding a 12th early voting site for the general election. This additional convenient voting opportunity will hopefully increase turnout and help reduce lines on election day, which was a problem in 2018. I have concerns about the cost and additional benefit of implementing another early voting site for the primary election in this fiscal year. As you know, Maryland's primary is on the back end of the primary calendar. If the presidential nominations are already determined by the time of our primary, turnout might be very low for the whole primary, as there are no other competitive races in the county. Thank you for your role in making our democracy work. Sincerely, Mark Elrich. So it's the county executive's directive that he will not fund an early voting site for the primary election. So that leaves us to consider whether or not we add a 12th site for the general election. And in that regard, are there any motions?
Excuse me. The law says that the board, in order to recommend something, has to have approval from the state board and the governing body of the county. So the county executive has his views, but that does not limit what we do. It's obviously, his views are obviously very influential, but that does not mean that when you say we have the issue for the general election, we still have the issue for the primary.
Okay.
Because the law does not say that the county executive, if he says he doesn't support it for the primary, I happen to disagree with his assessment on several levels, but it does not say that if he doesn't support it for the primary that we can't.
David, I just want to be clear, you don't think the county executive is part of the governing body of Montgomery County?
No, well, first of all, I don't know that he's part of the governing body of Montgomery County. That has never been litigated to my knowledge. But what I also believe is that statute that says that it has to have approval of the governing body, it does not require that we have approval of the governing body in advance. That was a request of this board and basically at the behest of the president, that he wanted to know before we voted, what will the county do? But we also could vote today to recommend something and then ask the county and including the executive and the council. For example, if we were to vote for a 12th early voting site, but not at the location that the 7 council members suggested, I'm quite sure that we wouldn't just say, oh well. We would go to them and ask them whether they would fund it, and then they could decide whether they would fund it. The law does not say in which order it has to be done.
Can the council tell us what to do? I thought we're independent bodies, so we don't have.
Well, these are just recommendations. That's all.
They can give recommendations, but
all.
They cannot tell us what to do.
Correct.
No one is suggesting that they can. But what they can do is they can fund or not fund whatever we decide to do.
Well, I think the county executive's opinion that he doesn't think it's appropriate to spend taxpayer money for the primary is very important and is a guide for us. He's the county executive, and certainly he's
got a point.
He's the leader of the county. The people elected him as the county executive. He doesn't think we should have an early voting site in the primary.
Well, if you're putting that open for discussion, I realize that we don't have a motion on the floor. I would say that his prognostication about the Democratic presidential nomination is very unlikely to be true. Maryland has had late primaries since I was a kid. And Maryland, while we are unlikely to have 20 candidates who are still active candidates by the time we vote in Maryland, we are extraordinarily unlikely to have the point where we've gotten to a conclusion. And that's particularly true this year because the Democratic Party does not have superdelegates unless we get to a second ballot. So whereas in the past, the election ended very shortly after the last primary. In fact, you may remember that in 2016, it went all the way to the end of the primaries. Then there was a dispute among superdelegates. But I don't think it's appropriate for us to make decisions based on what we think will be the prognostication for the Democratic presidential primaries. I think he's wrong about what's going to happen in those primaries. Like I said, I think it's highly unlikely that the Democratic presidential nomination will be decided by the end of April. But I think that we have to, our citizens want to vote regardless. They are very anxious to vote, not just ours. Citizens all over the country are more excited about voting than ever. I think that we have to take that into consideration as well.
Well, it's not that they can't vote. There'll be a primary election day. He's just talking about early voting.
Yeah. He doesn't think that there's a need or a cost imperative to have early voting in the primary.
Well, Jim, if we're going to...
Just adding the site, we're going to...
That's what I mean, adding a 12th site, Adding a 12th site. I think the way to move the discussion along is to take a motion on early voting sites, and then if there's any amendments, we can deal with that.
For 11 sites, I move...
All right, so is there a motion to adopt early voting sites?
Yes. I move we accept the Beacon Social Hall. Is that good, Social Hall? instead of St. Catherine Laboratory, the Wheaton Community Center. I move for that one.
The primary and general.
For primary, general, I don't know. Do we use it for general too?
Yeah.
Are we only doing these one at a time?
No,
I thought that'd probably be easier.
we can do one at a time.
Wait, are you talking about they're going through every site one at a time?
No, ones that are being motioned.
Right, yeah.
Well, I'm a little confused, Mr. President. I thought that we have to have a motion, not just for ones we are changing, but for any that we are establishing.
I agree. Yeah, I mean.
So Nahid, it's your motion to move from St. Catherine's to Wheaton, and then maintain the other voting sites, early voting sites that were utilized in the 2018 election?
The other 10 sites, yes, stay the same.
So your motion is to adopt.
I can read each side.
So your motion is to adopt the all 11 sites that we used last election, except moving St. Catherine's to
10 sites. The 10 sites, because then the 11th site is a new site.
Right.
Well, the 11th site is moving Wheaton.
Right, but he was saying the 11 sites. So just to clarify, the 10 sites
10 plus
replacing.
Wheaton.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Did you have an amendment or discussion?
So Nahid's motion is
to adopt
to adopt the 10 sites plus the Wheaton Social Hall.
Right.
10 sites.
Okay.
And move from St. Catherine's to
Wheaton to the Wheaton.
So we have 11
to the Wheaton Social Hall. Okay. Yes, I'd like to move to amend that motion to change the Wheaton site to the gymnasium.
I second.
Change the Wheaton site
to the gymnasium.
Wait, we keep the Wheaton site, just move it.
Right. To change. Right.
Shout, may I read an email that I just received?
Yes.
Okay, so when the presentation was going on, Margaret asked me to reach out to Nikki Charlson, who's the Deputy Administrator for the State Board of Elections. Her email back to me, because I left a long voicemail, was, I recommend the board approve the preferred location, e.g. gym, and an alternate location if the primary location is not accessible. In the documents submitted to the State Board, I recommend that a diagram of the preferred and alternate location be included, as well as accessibility issues with the primary location and whether and how they can be addressed. The package should include the board action. We need to know by the end of the year whether the primary location has been made accessible and can be used, or whether the alternate location will be used.
You're talking about Praisner?
Talking about both.
Yeah. Both.
So now let me change my motion.
Wait, let me.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
That means that you all have the option of going ahead and designating a preferred location with additional survey and analysis as to the accessibility issues and whether they can be addressed. And then there would be an alternate location in the event that the accessibility issues could not be addressed.
Would you be willing to have the gym be preferred and the social hall be the backup?
Change it later.
Doesn't matter. Yes,
Okay.
we can change it.
Okay.
Bottom line, we can change it later if we have to.
Right. Well, but it sounds like they want us to tell them which one is preferred and which one is secondary, and I think we're agreeing that the gym is the preferred location if possible.
Yes.
Modify.
I don't think so.
I'm sorry.
Call
Chris. Yes.
I think that
There was something that I omitted as I was speaking about
Yes.
the gymnasium at Wheaton. That I think you should
stand up so we can hear it in the mic.
I had omitted a comment about the Wheaton Gymnasium that you might be interested in knowing. If we take on the gymnasium at Wheaton, it would be preferred that the floor be covered some way to protect it. Now, I am not an expert, and we would need people to advise us, but I did a real quick research on the web, and there are different floor coverings to protect gyms floors for other activities, other events. The one item that I looked at, the one product that I looked at, was a type of heavy plastic that was supposed to be so that heels and so forth wouldn't penetrate.
And equipment.
Right, moving equipment and whatever. For the whole gymnasium, and I don't anticipate that we would use the whole gymnasium, but for the whole gymnasium it would cost us over $5,000 to cover the floor. I just wanted you to know that.
And then there's the electricity cost.
And I think that we prefer the gym.
I think the electrical cost would be roughly the same if the equipment is roughly the same. It's just a question of where it would be located.
I'm still not clear why we prefer the gym.
Yeah,
Because it's so much bigger.
Well,
But
the
it
social
costs
hall has
more.
the same amount of.
It's on the second floor.
Downstairs.
The gym is downstairs.
And you
The
need-
gym is much larger.
And it's-
The gym is much closer to where people are. They don't have to
It's
go
not
out of their
ADA
way to get
compliant.
there.
But aren't they saying you have to use the lift to get down to
No,
it?
that's the Praisner Center.
Praisner.
That's the Praisner
We're
Center.
talking about the Wheaton.
We're talking about the
Okay.
Wheaton one.
So we
one more
can
thing about
decide
the Wheaton.
which one.
Gym first.
Right, gym or
Right.
social hall.
Right, and there's plenty of time
whichever
to figure out what's
Right.
doable.
Right.
All right, so Nahid's motion is to approve the 10 early voting sites from the last election, and for the 11th site, Wheaton replacing St. Catherine's, preference to use the gym.
Okay, but I
An
want to
alternate of the social hall.
I want to add on the record, I
Yes.
don't.
There's a motion.
I don't.
Is a motion. Who seconded? Is anybody?
I-
Jackie did the original, but then is there?
I seconded Nahid's motion.
Right.
David, you have a motion?
No, please. Diane was talking.
Yeah, I don't favor the gym because I'm concerned about the costs that this Board of Elections framework in which we need to operate, and I don't think slapping another $5,000 to get the floor ready and not even knowing what the costs of wiring the thing up are a wise investment of taxpayer dollars. So I don't favor the gym over the other one at all.
Okay.
There's a lot of them that are about the same size that they're using.
Any other comments?
Well, I just reiterate that the size of the gym is much larger than the social room. My recollection is that there are sockets on the same side as the stands, one or two sockets on the same side as the stands. There are at least two sockets on, I'll call it the right side, and I think there are at least 4 sockets facing the stands and 2 or 3 sockets on the left side. So, in other words, if you have the gym as the preference, and I'm correct, then you don't have to put any expense in changing the sockets. If I'm incorrect, it shouldn't cost too much to add additional sockets, and I imagine the rec department would like to have additional sockets.
Robin's going to make this work.
What?
Right, Robin?
As an OSHA.
No, the issue is going to be the cost of electrical and the cost to protect the gym
Well, this is our
floor.
preference. I mean, if
Well, I assume that we get the opportunity, based on what Kevin told us, after we get the cost, the whole thing out. For example, the protective covering might be of value to the rec department, not just for us. But after we cost the whole thing out, we then get the opportunity to say it's feasible or it isn't. I mean, I think cost is part of feasibility.
I think that's
So-
what Nikki said. If
Yeah.
we can always change our mind.
That's how I read it, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
All right, so-
I think we should X out the part that Jim threw in about favoring the gym. That's not helping us.
Is
get
that
anywhere.
an amendment that you're proposing?
No, I'm saying
She's
go
just
back
voting-
to
she-
Naid's.
Oh.
Jim just threw in something that's not helping.
What? No, the gym. You said the gym. Yeah.
You do know
Oh, you favor the gym?
Really? I said for gym right now, let's see.
Preference,
the
yeah.
study, the feasibility study,
Mhm.
then we can select the social hall.
It's our preference. It's not a done deal until we get the.
Yeah.
But she wants to know our preference,
Prefer if the cost
and
is
if we
right.
can't do it, then we go to the social hall.
Yeah, so the paperwork needs to go into the state board
Right.
by September 30. That's the deadline that it needs to be submitted because they have to be designated 6 months before the election. So I think
So how do
this
we?
is going to give you some opportunity to go ahead and analyze the issue.
Right.
And then have
Right.
the preferences, and then the staff can notify the state board staff whether that's still the
Can we-
board's
can we
preference.
And it also gives us an opportunity to find out if there's funding for any of these things between now and September 30th, because the issue of the floor covering literally just came up a few minutes ago.
Yeah, let
How
them
do
do
we
some
vote
study.
collectively between now and September 30th?
Well,
The paperwork needs to be submitted, so it'll be
The
submitted
pre-
with the preference
the
and with.
Preference,
all the-
yeah.
Not only that, the president has the ability to call a meeting or to call a phone meeting.
That's correct. It's
But
just a
how do we
preference.
make a preference without the data?
Well,
My preference is we don't spend money we don't have. We don't add up the costs.
Well, we don't know what the cost is
Oh,
yet.
exactly, so how can you make a preference?
It's just, if we can't, we can't.
So Diane, the way this works is, so you all vote on the locations, then there's a packet of material that's submitted for each early voting location that the state board staff reviews to go ahead and make sure that it meets all of the requirements set forth in the statute and in COMA. Okay, then those recommendations are then made to the state board at one of their meetings where they approve all the early voting sites. So all that would happen now is the paperwork that gets submitted would have a preference, Jim, all the things, and then what issues there would be with regard to cost and accessibility, and then there would be an alternate. Now, in the interim between now and whenever the state board meets to go ahead and vote on those, if you all were to say, oh, okay, now that we've gotten additional information, that's going to be a showstopper for using our preferred location, and we need to use the alternate, this just gives you the flexibility.
Well, for example, our expert on the equipment hasn't seen the gymnasium yet. So for us to then decide that we're not going to go to the gymnasium because of the electrical issues when she hasn't had a chance to look, I would think that, I mean, where I'm coming from on this is that, we've been moving towards gyms everywhere we can. Yeah. And we've moved to the gym in Potomac, we've moved to the gym in Bethesda, we've been in the gym in Damascus, and the idea is to try and make voting as easy as possible and lines as short as possible. So,
may I ask a question of reference? When the nice lady from Wheaton
Robin
was giving us Robin.
She's the rec department director.
My question, just a quick question. Did you say that there was a lot of disruption if we used the gym or not? A lot of disruption to the normal schedule of Wheaton? Yes. Thank you.
Is there a lot of disruption to the normal schedule of Potomac?
Yes.
Is there a lot of disruption to the normal schedule at Damascus?
David, I asked the one question.
Yes, and I asked others.
Excuse me, Robin, take fifth, please.
She wants to answer the question for Damascus.
Has no gym, social hall. It has a combination. That's why it's unique.
Okay.
It doesn't have a separate social hall.
Okay.
I have a question also, Robin. With other gyms, have there been floor coverings before the election board uses for voting?
They've always been old gyms. This is a brand new makeover. Thousands and thousands.
It's a nice floor.
All right, so,
Potomac is 30 years old.
okay, so, all right, so now the motion before the board is to approve the 10 early voting sites from the last election and moving the 11th site from St. Catherine's to Wheaton with a preference that we use the gymnasium over the social
If the
hall.
cost is right.
Social hall. David?
I would like to move to, I move to amend the motion to add a 12th early voting site for both the primary and the general at White Oak Rec Center.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second it.
So we have to vote on that first?
We have to discuss it first.
Yeah, but I'm just saying we move on that first?
Would you
So
please
now we're wrapping up
distribute
that
these?
issue with the 12 voting sites?
Distribute. This is for board members. This is for you all, and for the public too. May I speak to my motion?
Yep.
So there are a number of reasons why I'm making the motion to add a 12th early voting site for both the primary and the general election. And the first one, and the handout that I'm sending around to people gives you an indication, which is there is actually polling data that makes clear that the percentage of people who are extremely enthusiastic about voting in the 2020 election is higher than it's been at any point since 2004, and not just higher, but a lot higher. And as you'll see, that roughly we are roughly 400 days before the election, and those who are extremely enthusiastic. Now, understand that that does not include those who said they are very enthusiastic. That includes only those who said they are extremely enthusiastic about voting, and that's roughly 45% of voters.
Wait, start this. Give me your. This is CNN.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's clarify.
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is all
Okay, go ahead.
CNN polling
CNN
we're relying on.
Okay, well, you can decide whether you want.
Record.
Oh, okay, for the record, it's the only polling data that anyone at this table has presented. Okay, the only data that's been presented. Okay. Anyway, the closest election to this has been roughly in the 30% category, and you'll see on the back of the page that if you add together the extremely or very enthusiastic about voting, it's approaching 75%, whereas ordinarily at this time it would be closer to 50. So, in addition to the anecdotal evidence that many of us have felt that the 2020 election is going to have very high turnout, there is some data pointing in that direction.
I thought you were going to prognosticate.
Secondly, I point everybody, the map that I've distributed came directly from our staff's January presentation on wait times on Election Day in 2018. And you'll see that the map has a color coding for 4 different categories of wait time. The national standard for wait time, that they say that no voter should wait more than 30 minutes at the polls. And there are 12 election day sites that had peak wait times of 60 minutes or more. I know because I was at the Praisner Center on Election Day that people who arrived at 8 o'clock in the evening did not leave until 10 o'clock. So then the second category, where I believe there's roughly 30 some more, maybe this, hold on a second, I'm going to tell you the exact number, but basically roughly a quarter of our precincts have wait times on Election Day that are over the 30, have peak wait times that are over the 30-minute standard. So one of the goals for the board is to try and address that issue on Election Day. And the very back page of the handout I gave you is the same map blown up a bit. And what you will notice on the right-hand side of that map, where I have attempted to highlight White Oak Community Rec Center, except for the fact that because it's in the orange category, the yellow highlight doesn't show up very well. But you'll notice that there are a lot of precincts along that Route 29 corridor that are in either the highest weight category or the second highest weight category. So we know from the past that an early voting site can affect what turnout is on Election Day. We are encouraging people to vote early and therefore make Election Day easier for everyone who votes on Election Day. So to me, the idea behind early voting at the White Oak Rec Center is to help to address the Election Day issues. As you heard in the public statements that we have gotten today, and also things that we've gotten in the mail, there are significant transportation issues for people in the White Oak area. They are more likely than people in other parts of the county to not be able to drive necessarily to the polls. This would be a way of making that easier and relieving some of the pressure on the nearby sites. Those of you who were on the board during the 2018 election, I'm sure remember that there was a lot of attention paid to the issues that we had along the Route 29 corridor. I am not suggesting that this is the only thing that we can or should do to address those issues. I am suggesting that this is an opportunity. The state has given us the opportunity. I think we have a very high likelihood that the county will pay for it. The cost is $117,000. Let's not inflate the cost. That is the cost that our staff has told us. And in fact, I believe that someone at our last meeting said it's 120, and Margaret said, nope, it's 117. So that is a bargain, to get people off of voting on Election Day. It also may cause some of them not to vote absentee, which will make our job easier for absentee and save costs where the absentee count is concerned. So I think we have an opportunity to address an issue that has been a serious issue for us, and I hope that we will take that opportunity. I think that most observers, I realize that the county executive is apparently not one of them. Most observers believe that the turnout in the 2020 primary and the 2020 general are going to be at record levels. As you know, early voting has increased drastically, with every election, and it would be very surprising that did not happen in this election as well.
Can I just ask a question about your maps, just for clarification? What does peak wait times by precinct mean? When was this taken? What days? Is this the primary? Is this the general? Are all these?
It is
a snapshot taken at the same moment in every single location? I don't get it. This is irrelevant to me until I know what the universe is.
Well, I think Margaret may be in a better position to speak to it, but my understanding, and then whoever wants to answer, my understanding is this is from the 2018 general election. It was part of
it would be election day.
Election day, 2018 general election, based on actual data from the voters, based on when they. I guess when they arrived and left, but I'm not sure exactly how that was done.
Yes, what this represents is the highest peak time for voters on election day. It is not a test of early voting peak wait time.
Right.
Can we turn that off?
Someone's phone's on.
It's right there. And it's election day general.
The election day general election. Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
So specifically, those precincts that had the wait time during peak period of 35 to 55 minutes were 45 polling places. If you go outside of the peak wait time, which generally in this county is after 10 o'clock in the morning, the average wait time was 13 minutes. The long wait group, which was the 12 precincts, which included Praisner, the average wait time was anywhere from 60 to 120 minutes, with the average wait time 30 minutes. So this map reflect election day voting from the general election of 2018.
Right.
We need more scanner.
Well, we do, absolutely. We do need more scanners. We need more scanners. We may need more judges. We may need lots of things.
We've talked about that. That has nothing to do with today.
Yeah, let me.
What today has to do with is addressing this issue any way we can. One way that we can address the issue is by encouraging more people to vote early to lessen the burden on Election Day. And we have found, over time, more people are voting by early voting. Early voting is, extraordinarily popular in Montgomery County, not just in Montgomery County, but certainly in Montgomery County. And the idea is that if we were to get more people along that Route 29 corridor to vote during early voting, it will relieve the problem of peak wait times on Election Day.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I'm very convinced by the county executive's letter. Certainly nobody can criticize Mark Elrich for someone who's not for access to voting and more access, more ability for people to vote. And our own county executive says that he doesn't think early voting is necessary for the primary. And certainly he's not...
Another place for early voting.
He's not in favor of a 12th early voting site. And I'm very convinced by that because he's certainly not someone who we would believe would not want to do it for any political or any other reason. He cites a fiscal concern, and I have a fiscal concern because with this next election, our board has to come up with about $360,000, which we didn't have to come up with in the last election, to support this new connectivity between Orloff precincts. In addition,
we haven't talked about that one yet.
But I'm just saying we have to come up with $360,000 that we didn't need last election. Also, David says this is $117,000. So right there, we're almost at $500,000 between the 360 and the 117. Now, on the eastern side of the county, we have Burtonsville, we have Silver Spring, we have Wheaton, Mid-County, and Wheaton is a beautiful new facility. We're preferencing the gym, which will give a lot of people a lot of access. We've ordered more equipment, based upon the financial concerns and the money we have to come up with, which we didn't have to come up with. My view is that I agree with the county executive. It's not the time to spend the taxpayers' money when we don't think it's needed.
Now I call for the question. On the
amendment.
All right, so the amendment is, David's amendment is that the board add a 12th early voting site for the primary and the general at White Oak. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
So that's defeated.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion then that we agree with the county executive that there be a 12th voting site for the for the general only at White Oak.
I'll second that.
No.
Okay. Well, I reiterate my arguments about that $360,000 plus $100. That's $500,000. So, Dave.
So it's interesting, Jim, that you say you reiterate your argument, but you left out a key part of your argument. The key part of your argument was you were supporting the county executive, and the county executive says that he thinks there should be an additional early voting site for the general election, and that and obviously if he says that he thinks there should be an additional early voting site for the general election, he's certainly going to pay for it. So, Jim, you were very eloquent at our January meeting about some of the problems that we experienced in the East County, and particularly in the Route 29 corridor. Here is an opportunity. You've got 7 of the 9 council members telling you that they support an early voting site at White Oak for the general election, and you have the county executive saying that he supports an additional early voting site for the general election. So it's very clear that the money is there. So I think you need another reason to.
I don't think that's clear at all.
It's very clear.
I don't understand how you can support part of the letter and not the other. Is that what you're saying?
No, but you were specific in the voting site. He didn't say that he didn't want a voting site in the general. You gave a specific voting site that maybe that's what.
Well, we proposed a specific voting site, which happens to be the same specific voting site that 7 members of the council say they support, and that the chair of the delegation to Annapolis says that he supports. And the county executive chose not to specify a site, but says that he supports adding a 12th early voting site for the general election. Now, you would have to think very poorly of the county executive to think that he would write to us, tell us he supports adding a 12th early voting site, and then wouldn't fund it. Obviously, if he supports it, he funds it.
All right, may I maybe vote on this and kind of move this along?
Well, also, the issue of White Oak is another issue that the majority of the board may not be in favor of either.
Well,
So
then
I
why don't
think
you
the site-
tell us why?
First of all,
why don't we argue over the location if
No,
we determine we're
that's not
going
on
to
the-
have a 12th location?
Well, here's David raises a
This is we're
question. I
wasting
think
time.
we're addressing the eastern part of the county with Wheaton and using the large gym. I
Well,
think.
well, now hang on a second. We're not addressing the eastern part of the county with Wheaton. First of all, Wheaton is not addressing any of the people who live on the 29 corridor. They're not going to Wheaton to vote. Secondly, you can't say we're addressing it with the gym when we don't know if we're going to be in the gym. And we're not addressing it with Wheaton by being in the social hall. We've had early voting in Wheaton, for several elections now.
I would object that you saying diametrically that nobody on the 29 corridors is going to go to Wheaton. That's simply people work, and I lived over there for years and years and years, near where you live, as a matter of fact, at least. And people go back and forth all the time. It's simple.
We actually have data. If we go back to the presentation that was made to us, we have data on all the people who voted in Wheaton and where they live. Because we have the little dot map that we got.
Early voting. Come on, David.
Well, also, the staff has made a significant purchase of new equipment, which is going to help alleviate lines.
Has the state approved them yet?
Yes.
So we
have purchased, do you want me to answer?
Yeah, we purchased a lot of...
We purchased 146 DS200 scanners that are going to be deployed at early voting centers as well as election day polling locations. We purchased additional and received 108 poll books and printers, and we are kind of in a strange area right now that I'll describe later in this meeting with regards to additional ballot marking devices.
In addition,
so there's extra equipment.
Didn't we have a 5-page ballot in the last election?
3 pages.
3 pages.
Yeah, well, front and back.
Front 5.
Pages, yeah.
In our general election, we're going to have president and 2 or 3, depending on congressional races.
And many more voters.
But it's not, they took a long time to fill out our ballot last time. This is a quickie.
But it still doesn't address the transportation issue. You have many, many people who live in the apartments around White Oak who do not have reliable transportation and rely on public transportation.
But
White Oak is within walking distance.
That's true for the whole county. Why we
they
don't
can vote absentee.
The whole county does not have 3-hour wait times.
Look at the
They don't have 3-hour wait times all over the county on election day. They have them at Praisner and Silver Spring.
Excuse me, Praisner, it wasn't because we did not support them. It was because people were in the wrong precinct.
If you have a class failing 75% of the time, at some point you look at the teacher and say,
David
what are
was
you doing?
there, Alan was there.
It's not
They knew
always
what's
the
going
voters'
on.
fault.
It wasn't
not
because,
all of those voters.
It wasn't because we didn't have enough support, because they were there wrong.
Yes, she is. She's saying it's the voters.
No, because they were there, because since they were voting at the early election, they thought they can vote general election. But they're not supposed
and we have a letter in our packet, which unfortunately I didn't get a chance to read until today, that suggests that the same thing was happening, I believe, at Kingsview. That basically the idea of, we have to deal with the voters as they are. And if the voters need, if the voters are confused about when they come to for which election, they don't follow this as closely as we do. We have to address whatever issues on this that we can address. The other thing is that it's not the same everywhere in the county, because in some parts of the county, transportation by car is very common and car ownership is very common. In the White Oak area, roughly 35% of the people are relying upon public transportation. That's a very different circumstance, and this isn't an effort to try and address that problem.
Jim, a couple of things here.
Well, Alan's got the floor.
I haven't talked yet. I subscribe fully to what David said. There was some snickering about the CNN poll. New York Times says the 2020 presidential election is poised to have the highest turnout in the century. Fortune magazine says that. Times says that. Newsweek says that. USA Today says that. What are you going to do if on the day after the election you learn there have been long lines in the Route 29 corridor and people were saying...
CNN said that?
Wait, let me
CNN said that they had a problem?
Let me finish.
Oh, come on, we can't deal with what if.
Let me finish, please.
We deal with what ifs every day.
Let me finish. What if there are long lines? What are you going to say to the public, to the people on the Route 29 corridor? You didn't give us a 12th site for the general election. Why didn't you do that?
I mean, you saw this problem in 2018. You had 2 years to deal with it, and you decided not to. You had an opportunity to, and you didn't. And what happened to accountability? You know, when something bad happens, you try to fix it. We have an opportunity to do that. And so, you know, if this happens again, is somebody going to be accountable for this?
Well,
I mean, is it going to get covered in the Washington Post again?
Okay, I think that wishing for something is great. Being able to pay for it is reality. And I think that tax dollars and where the money is and what Jim so astutely pointed out, we're looking at enormous costs. You just can't have everything. When is it going to stop? I mean, we've got 11 early voting sites. We've got how many days to vote early? We've got mail-in ballots. We've got absentee. I mean, for crying out loud, one voting site, the costs outweigh the benefit. Maybe people will
maybe
learn.
for you, Diane, but not for the people that I represent in White Oak.
Let me finish.
Or in East County.
Can I finish? Maybe people will realize if they didn't like what happened standing in line last time, they're not going to wait for rush hour. They're not going to wait till the last day of voting. I mean, there's got to be some onus on the voter also, but that's beside the point. I'm saying the funding is the issue, bottom line.
And we also, have a responsibility in our advertising to tell people to go between 10 and 2 or whatever the hours are you gave me. There's a lot of things that we can do that way, and then people can go when many can go, some can't. And on the weekends also people can go.
People with blue-collar jobs can just tell their boss, I'm just going to go between 12 and 4. I mean,
people can
really?
go on the weekends.
Not everyone.
All right, David, and then we're going to take a vote.
The bus doesn't run. They've already talked about the transportation on the weekends.
Yeah.
To Praisner and to Silver Spring.
And vote by absentee
There's no metro
ballot.
stop.
I mean, there are a multitude of options, a multitude.
So
Early voting site is not the only one.
No, it's not, but it is one that actually is quite cost efficient because it does allow people from all over the county.
That's your opinion.
At the moment, I'm expressing my opinion. Thank you. Yes, my opinion is that it's very cost effective to have early voting. It's $117,000. It's going to it can address problems in several different precincts. I do want to. As Jackie knows, every year I suggest that we do more advertising, encouraging people not to vote on the last day of early voting, and I would suggest that we put it in the sample ballot. That and that we ask for and have daily press releases during early voting. Vote today, avoid the line on the last day. That I would be in favor of all that, but that's not the issue here. And as one who spent basically from 2 to 10 on election day at the Praisner Center on election day, the issue was not that people waited until the last minute. The issue was that there were very long lines the entire day.
Because they were in the wrong place.
No. The wrong place was one of the issues. Remember that we sent 2 board members and 2 staff. Was it only 2 staff? I believe it was 2 staff that we sent in addition to the staffing that the center had already in order to address the lines. And we stayed there because we couldn't leave, because the lines did not dissipate. The number of provisional ballots were roughly 200 and some?
20.
I'm sorry? 220. So clearly 220 provisional ballots were not the entire cause. And if you look back at the presentation from January, there were multiple causes for why these lines were caused, and that particular precinct had a number of them. it is a fallacy to suggest that it's simply about the voters or about their or about procrastination. Although I agree that we should encourage people to vote earlier during early voting, but we really should address the issues that we can, and this is an opportunity to address an issue that you all are passing up.
One question. 117,000. Is that for both the primary and the
No,
general?
it's each. It's each.
Each.
But it's in two different fiscal years.
Okay. Thank
By
you.
adding White Oak, we will eliminate that long line in Fresno, you think?
I think it'll help a lot,
Why?
because I think we're going to combine that with doing outreach that encourages people in those areas to vote.
You said people don't have a car. If somebody live in White Oak, how they're going to walk all the way to Fresno?
Well, exactly. You are making my point for me. They're not going to walk all the way to Presner. They're going to walk to White Oak. That's the whole point. There'll be a bunch of people who will walk to White Oak. There'll be other people who will take public transportation to White Oak because it'll be closer to them, because it'll be on their beaten path.
So these are the people they're voting in Fresno?
Some of them.
Now?
Some of them.
How do you know that?
I don't.
Okay,
I'm guessing.
Okay,
Just
then.
like anyone.
I'm guessing you do not need White Oak. I'm guessing you need it in the moon. So is that good?
No, and people did not wait until the last minute to vote. The 3-hour lines were noted on Twitter at 10:45 on election day, that there were 3-hour lines, and they were still going on at 2 in the afternoon. It did not stop. It started in the morning, and was still going on. So we're talking about Presner on election day.
But they have many
They were
other
not waiting
options.
until
They could do,
the end of the day.
We have 2 weeks prior to that to vote?
Sure.
Okay, there you go.
Look, I think-
But how are they going to get there, Diane?
Well,
Yeah, I think everybody's
finish the
opinion.
conversation. Finish the
But I
conversation.
think everybody's opinion is
Yes, let's vote.
noted. All right, so the vote is on Lisa's amended motion to add a 12th early voting site for the primary and the general at...
Did she just said
I mean, for the general, I'm sorry.
This is just for the general.
Just for the general. Lisa's motion to add a 12th early voting site for the general election at White Oak. That's on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
I move that we add a 12th early voting site for the primary and the general at the Bauer Drive Rec Center.
To replace?
No, not to replace. The 12th early voting site at the Bauer Drive Rec Center.
I'll take a vote.
Oh, is it a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Go ahead.
If you look at the map that I distributed on the back page, you will see roughly in the center left of the map, there are 2 of the 12 worst peak wait time precincts that are in Rockville, and there are a bunch of other precincts adjoining them that are in the second category of the worst wait times, the category of the 35 to 55 minutes, all along Norbeck Road. The idea here is that we have an opportunity. Apparently you guys don't want to do this in White Oak. I'm giving you another opportunity to address similar issues that are, instead of being along Route 29, or along Norbeck Road and along 355. But yes, it is true, we do have other early voting sites that are not far from that location. But in order to address these issues, because even with an early voting site at the Executive Office Building and at the Mid-County Community Center, we still have very significant wait times in a bunch of precincts that are along Norbeck Road. So my suggestion is that we add an early voting site in order to address that. We would also, although it doesn't show on the blow-up map, we would also be helping to address some of the wait times that come from north on Georgia Avenue, because a lot of people who live in the Olney area travel down Norbeck Road to get...
And that's not far from the Civic Center.
From which Civic Center?
The Executive Office Building. Place. Not far at all. It's right around the corner.
It is several miles. I can tell you exactly how many if you would like from the executive office building. But the executive office building, as everyone here knows, has limited parking and a number of other issues. Whereas adding an additional site, Bauer Drive was among the highest performing sites that we had before we moved to the Mid-County Rec Center. It is in a location that people go. It is not only at a rec center, it is next to schools, and when school is out of session, that provides the possibility of overflow parking, and it is across the street from a busy shopping center, so that it will get people's attention.
Did you want to say something?
The executive office building does not have a problem with the parking. You can park in the council building, because I covered it for the last God knows how many years. No problem. And they have plenty handicap space.
Well,
no problem.
Well,
and we have senior citizens there, which they walk, no problem. So, I know that, I'm positive about it. So,
well, you are describing a place that is across a major roadway and, a more than 5-minute walk away from where people
right
park.
By the metro.
All right, we're going to take a vote.
Yes, take a vote.
All right, this is on David's motion to add for the primary and the general a 12th early voting site at Bauer Drive. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay, my last one.
Okay.
I move to add a 12th early voting site at Bauer Drive only for the general election.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Go ahead.
Any discussion? All right, we're going to take a vote. All those in favor of David's last motion to add a 12th early voting site only for the general election at Bauer Drive, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Then now can we go to Nahid's original motion?
Right, thank you.
Yes.
The 11.
Yes, we're going back to the original motion.
Yeah.
This is Nahid's motion for the primary and the general election in the next election cycle, 2020, maintain the 10 early voting sites we had in the last election, and for the 11th site, we move early voting from St. Catherine's to the new facility in Wheaton, with the board's preference that the early voting be held in the gymnasium. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Oh,
Jackie had already
It was a second a long time ago.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so that's unanimous. Okay. All right. Okay, Margaret, your report?
Yes.
I mean, we all read it if you want to just highlight it.
Quickly, Operations Specialist Allison.
We have gotten clearance from the Office of Management and Budget to go ahead and...
Oh, yeah, well, can we keep it down? We're having trouble recording. Thank you.
And so I expect that ad will go up this week.
Okay, and our temporary IT staff is completing all the surveys of the polling place for the network data for Election Day. Budget, Kara Bunbury. Current budget?
Okay, so everyone has a copy of...
Here, we won't be able to hear you on the mic.
Come join us.
It's been a long meeting, so I'll try to be brief. I believe everyone has a copy of the current budget spreadsheet. As of September 4th, we are at about $500,000, so we're relatively early into this fiscal year, and most of our expenditures have been in personnel. If you have any specific questions, just let me know. I'll give you guys a second. You need a second to sort of arrange your papers?
Yes. What documents are we working off of?
Just the budget spreadsheet. So here we go. And we went over that very quickly. We're at about $500,000, mostly in personnel. Then you have the next spreadsheet, which was from Margie, which was the previous budget specialist, and that was a board action. And it just tells you the total from the 2018 recounts, and that was about $124,000. So it looks like this. It's very short. Should be after.
It's a little further away in the back as a follow-up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just in the follow-up pile.
Sorry, what are we looking for?
Outcome-based
The shorter.
Okay.
Here it is.
All right, one of the things that with the new administration is we have a new process for budgeting. So, Kara.
All right. So for FY 2021, we've been informed by the county that we're transitioning to outcome-based budgeting. We're looking for a handout like this. And I'm just going to briefly go over that. And I want to stress to you all that we're still in the learning process, so this is very new to all of us. And I would truly appreciate it if I could meet with the budget subcommittee.
Yes.
So Naeed and Alan, if we could meet as soon as possible, that would be great. Under outcome-based budgeting, the CE, Mark Elbridge, is focusing on priority outcomes. And we are aligned with number 7, effective, sustainable government. Everyone know? Okay. And one of the biggest changes is we're going to be focusing more on programs. And so money is going to be allocated based on programs. Another big change is that we are going to have an opportunity to speak to the CE and sort of advocate for the department at the beginning of the budget process. And what we'd like to see happen is for you all to have a representative at one of his budget forums, either on October 28th or 29th at Blackrock or Wheaton Library. So we'll get to see the new facility in person. And you can, once we've talked about this in the budget subcommittee and maybe an executive session next month, we can present to him some of our priorities within BOE, and you all can develop something you'd like to say about what we see happening in 2021.
So what the county executive would like to do is, rather than using the old model as a process, you came to the county executive's office at the tail end of the process. He is looking for input at the beginning of the process. So that's why we are recommending that once the board has decided the budget, and so those issues, so for instance, the board has traditionally asked for more money for advertising. That would be your opportunity on the front end of the process to identify to the county executive that these are expenses that are above and beyond what has traditionally been funded, or what we used to call the mark.
What day is that again?
Well, it'll be up to the board to decide which day they would like to speak at open board budget forum, but it's either October 28th, I believe, is at Wheaton, and October 29th is at Blackrock. They're at Blackrock and Wheaton.
I'm confused. Sorry. Which is when?
I believe it's the 28th is at Blackrock.
Okay. And those are going to be identical events.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's in October, you said?
Yes. So it would be after the board meeting, when once you've set your budget, but it's those extra things that that's not included in the budget. So it would be things like the advertising, additional election judges to address the increased number of people, things like that.
Well, I'd like as many of us can go as possible.
October 21st?
You said
October
somebody has to
27 or
speak.
20
Is that correct?
October 28th or
Somebody has
29th.
to speak, Jim.
And it's in the evening or during the day?
It's in the evening.
Okay.
So pick the dates you want
I
to
don't have my
go.
calendar. It's in the
It's
evening?
like a Monday or a Tuesday.
Yeah, it's a Monday and a Tuesday.
It's about 7 o'clock. So it's an open.
You can make that decision next month, but we wanted you to be aware of.
Can we make that on?
This is a significant change for the.
So our next meeting is October 21st?
Yes.
Yes.
So we can make it at that?
Well, do you have to sign up in order to speak?
I'll work through those details. I'll look into it. I think it's a public forum. We'll probably have to do some
Right, because if there's a sign up in advance, waiting until the 21st to decide might mean that you'll be there till the wee hours of the morning.
We'll get you signed up early.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
We will work at signing you up early.
Our meeting's the 21st.
27th or the 28th, right?
I believe it's the
Is it
28th and the 29th.
28th and 29th.
It's the 28th and 29th.
27 is Sunday.
Either works for me.
It's the 28th and 29th.
Okay, Jim will speak on our behalf.
The one in Wheaton is at the rec center,
Yes.
and Black Rock is the one in Germantown, right?
Yes. Yes. I think it's the Wheaton Library.
Right. Well,
Which is the week, 29th?
29th is at Wheaton. 28th is at Black Rock.
I can do either one.
Our meeting is the
Yeah, you let me know. Okay.
Any questions?
No.
Okay, voter registration. Jessica, you received your monthly stats email earlier in the meeting, earlier in the month, I'm sorry. And in your packet, you received issue related to overseas mail. Jessica.
Yeah, Alan raised that point.
Yes. So just to recap for everybody else in the room, registration totals, we have 664,004 active registrants, 59,780 inactive, for a total of 723,784 total. 2, 3, 4. Yes, there was an email that went around and a request for a briefing on the overseas voter postal situation. I did prepare a memo for you that, as Margaret said, is in your packet.
Can you send it to us electronically too?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
So just the most brief, the U.S. is considering a potential withdrawal from the Universal Postal Union that would take place on October 17th, 2019. They have put forth a proposal to the UPU for a different method of assessing rates for members of the UPU that will be considered in a meeting they call an extraordinary Congress on September 24th and 25th. So they've brought together the member countries. They're going to meet on September 24th and 25th to consider the U.S.'s proposal for a change to the way the rate structures are done. The most immediate impact that if the U.S. did withdraw would be on municipalities in Maryland that have elections this year, because of course the period of when they'll be mailing out those ballots to those voters is prior to when this would be resolved or potentially be resolved. So we have been reaching out and working with those municipalities to give them all the information we can. And the U.S. State Department is working to negotiate individual agreements with the members of the UPU as an alternative method. And there's a slew of other election-related partners that are out there working towards different solutions. So we're following the recommendations of some of those partner groups, proactively reaching out to voters and the municipalities, make sure everybody has the most up-to-date information that they can have, and then kind of waiting to see what happens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, going on to the next thing, the State Board of Elections. In your packet is this preliminary agenda of the mandatory SPE conference, which is Thursday, October 17th, in Annapolis at the Crown Plaza Hotel. So it's mandatory for the board members to attend. It's mandatory for the board attorney to attend. It's mandatory for Margaret and Allison to attend. So next thing is I sent you earlier in the month the State Board of Elections email from Nikki with regards to the Election Day Network. The board informed the 5 largest jurisdictions that we are going to have to go on to this network, and I have some concerns that I shared with you. One, it's not required for the implementation of same-day registration. The proposed network, while it is similar to the early voting site, because of issues we've had in the past, the board's IT staff sets up all of the early voting sites to prevent errors and to correct connectivity with the poll books and also breakage of the equipment. The election day network requires us to do the same, requires that we set up at 255 locations, and we do not have enough IT staff to go out and troubleshoot 255 locations. 15% of the locations would be challenged. The state board staff was unable to assure the election directors that after the purchase of this network and system and its peripherals that the equipment would be compatible with the new poll books that we are going to purchase in 2022. Smaller counties that are getting a pass, they're not required to purchase the network equipment.
Was an explanation
And
given for that?
For
why the smaller counties are getting a pass?
This is all we've gotten. Okay. And then the use of major wireless carriers has not been stress tested with all the major counties pushing data of all the precincts simultaneously through the system. And the cost estimate was included in your packet, and it's about $387,000. Plus I'm sorry, $349,000.
Okay.
But there's every year there would be, or there's in 2022, if we got to keep the system, there would be a $60,000 cost for the data package.
Each year?
Yes. So this is a concern. I bring it to you because it is number one in expenditure that we are going to have to go forward with. And one of my recommendations is that the board may want to weigh in on this expenditure. I did mention this to Kevin and I sent it to him, and he agreed that the board may want to weigh in on this.
Well, you on the one hand, you said that it's an expenditure we have to pay, and on the other hand, you said we may want to weigh in. So what is it that we would be weighing in on if we have serious concerns about this? I have a number of concerns about it.
Well, the state's saying you need to pay. It's saying that the Montgomery County Board of Elections has to pay, but it's not something that's statutorily required. It's not subject to the 50-50 split that most election equipment is subject to.
Right. This one, they're telling us to pay the whole thing.
Right. And as I understand it, it's basically to allow the state board to track wait times at polling places.
Right.
So it does sort of beg the question: why is Montgomery County paying for this?
Right. Well, and
why are these smaller jurisdictions not having to do anything?
And if we're already able to track wait times, why would we be paying anything more to track them a different way?
Well, and while it may be of some academic interest,
right.
for future elections, it's a significant cost for something that's not going to. You're going to know on election day where you have long lines because you're going to get complaints from people saying there is a long line at this place or that place.
So why the wireless aspect? Because I would think that that's the thing that we should be most concerned about.
I would like Janet, you want to weigh in on this wireless piece?
Is there a deadline for this?
No, there's no deadline because we're not done testing, but Janet.
The state also said it was to transfer the same day registrations for the larger counties so that we could have the information the next day when we start processing.
But the first line of her email says that they don't need it for that purpose.
And then down further she says we would like to get it to you or something. And because a lot of times some of the larger counties do not upload their poll book data on time. That's not Montgomery County. We have ours in. So that holds them up, but it doesn't hold us up.
Jessica, would you like to address this also because provisional?
Yeah, and it affects me too. As Janet said in one of the state board meetings, there was a narrative of transferring these records, but of course, as you guys know, the volume of transactions, provisionals, and other things that take place on election day, it isn't necessary for my team's purposes that we can get right to processing those the next day anyway. So if that's the reason,
it's, for our purposes, it's not a necessary cost, but I don't know all the other.
I have one other issue on that.
Can I just one before?
Sure.
Allison, do you want to weigh in on this, on anything additional that hasn't been covered?
No, I think it's been covered.
I had when I read that letter, Margaret, that concerned me with the same-day registration. There was an outside vendor involved, and it appeared to me with an outside vendor for one of the processes. In the note you sent out, it talked about an outside vendor that will be on the internet for that, and it just sounded awfully hackable.
That was an email that Kevin got with regards to the Democratic Party weighing in.
What was this?
It was sent by Mark Hoffman to, I think it was me, you.
Yeah.
and
Now I
and I
remember.
just said it would be discussed and the board would be briefed on it. Have to be briefed today.
And I think he raised concerns about the idea that it was targeting certain jurisdictions and not others.
Targeting who?
Certain jurisdictions and not others. It's targeting the larger jurisdictions and not the smaller ones.
Well, and there was an outside vendor involved.
Well, he said that. I don't know what he's talking about.
Oh, all right. Because that would be on the internet, and I just it makes us very prone to people getting in.
All right, but what is
Getting to the
so?
It's on a VPN, which is a virtual private network. Nobody can access it. It's the same thing we use for early voting. It's a virtual private network.
So the question that I'm asking is, does the board wish to write a letter to the state board members regarding this topic? And if so, Kevin and I and Janet can develop the letter and circulate it.
The bottom line being, we don't want to pay.
Yeah, that would be, well, or if we're going to pay,
We want an explanation.
it's got to be
yeah.
at least 50-50.
Okay.
Let's
Well,
just say
and-
no.
And why it's necessary.
Well, and why it's necessary, and why aren't we including all the jurisdictions instead of just us? It seems like we're being taxed more heavily than others.
Yeah, let's add that too. But can you put a letter together, a draft?
Okay.
Do we have an idea as to? I had heard that this was mostly staff driven at the state level. Do we know if the state board members had an opportunity to weigh in on this yet?
It was a topic at the last state board meeting, and the explanation, Nikki did explain to the state board. I believe that she did state, I don't remember whether she stated that it was only the top 5 largest jurisdictions or not. What I do remember being stated was that it was not necessary in order to prevent people from voting twice, that it was being done in an effort to get the transaction data to us faster.
So that we can process our absentees faster or provisionals faster?
I'm not clear on that. That wasn't really what tasks we would be performing with this data was not clear to me.
Well, then I
Same
say
day
no money for that.
The same day registrations that are taking place in early voting now come through like MBA transactions. So they come in a process that's batched overnight, and we get the batches in the morning, and our voter registration staff work through and review those new voter records and then register them as voters. So
would this replace the need for the staff to do that?
no, this would be that.
This is election.
We already do it for early voting. This would now be for election day. So they're saying all these
So they would,
hundreds,
so
thousands
they
of
would be
transactions.
batched. They would be batched and sent to us instead of what? What do we do now?
What they're suggesting is that we don't get our poll books done in time. They won't get them batched overnight.
This is speculation.
Yeah.
I can only speculate that what they would do, given some live data on election day, is that they would somehow or another be able to prepare some batches to get to us that night, which might otherwise need to wait until the following night.
What Nikki said is that large counties sometimes miss the 3 a.m. cutoff. And so if they can do it numerous times during the day over a connection, then that data can be batched to the counties so they can process that in ways.
But this is not
batch
us they're talking about.
Yeah, well, we may have got,
Right.
we may have got, the eye on this,
Oh,
but
but
it may have been unfair.
you'll put a letter together?
Saying.
And in that same thing, where do we stand in wanting to open up the absentee ballots early? We've had letters and talked about that. Where do we stand with that?
But I don't want to leave this issue yet. I just would like to know, and our letter will say, unnecessary.
Well, why do we need it? Why does it cost so much? Why are the larger jurisdictions the only ones having to do it? And why is this not subject to the 50-50 split if indeed it's necessary?
Right.
At a minute, okay.
Right.
And then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. Next topic is...
Excuse me, I haven't answered my question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Where do we stand with opening the ballots early?
What's the status of that?
We need a legislative change. That's the status of it.
Just opening them.
Yeah, we need a legislative change.
That's, okay. And we sent a letter to the legislature.
Yes.
And did we ever hear back from them?
I don't think we did.
I don't remember.
I don't think so.
This isn't going to take more than a second. What does opening early mean?
Right now, by state law, we cannot canvass or slice open the envelope before Wednesday. By state regulations of the COMAR, we can't open it until Thursday. And so we want to have the opportunity to prep the ballots for canvass for all that have to be replicated by the web delivery process. And so we've been working with the state to amend the administrative procedures. And I think we got to an agreement point with the Mayo Committee with the state, but we still need a legislative change in order to
When we can open them.
to actually open the envelope.
Aren't we the only state that doesn't?
That
do
is
this?
correct. We're the only state that doesn't start by at least election day.
Yes. Yes. We're the only state.
We're the only one that
state.
doesn't.
Just getting back to the letter for a minute, and I'm sorry, Lisa, because I know this screws up the minutes when we go back to something. If we could also include a question about what they've done to make sure that that the wireless transmission is secure.
They don't take them out of the envelope.
I think it would be good to have them explain that to us. Thank you.
Okay. Upgrade of the voting system. Still remains on the calendar for the certification by the Federal Election Commission by the end of October. Testing appears to have resolved the display issue on the ballot marking device, allowing greater names to appear on one screen. SBE staff reported that the upload with the new version of software in this preliminary testing will increase the upload time from 6 seconds per media device, that's the flash drive, to a possible 1 minute or longer per device, because they are uploading all of the images at the same time. My concern, and I brought it to your attention, is that it would impact election night reporting. So what was taking 6 seconds could potentially take, seven times longer than we currently have, and it puts the 11 o'clock, 11:30 upload election results in jeopardy. SBE is continuing to work with ES&S with regards to testing the upgrade. The other issue that was a little bit disturbing was that the software is running on Windows 7, and that's only going to be supported through 2020. And right now, ES&S doesn't plan to upgrade the 6100 upgrade software to Windows 10, creating potential risks if it's not recertified by the EAC. And this doesn't impact the board as much as it impacts the staff. Is the ballot production and proofing is going to take longer because there's going to be more steps and more ballots. So these are some concerns that are outstanding with regards to the current 6100 series. Okay. All right, going on, is there anything that the staff or board members would like to be, anything else on that? Just a heads up, these are some significant showstoppers. State Board of Elections officially notified that the required number of early voting sites is 11. Monthly testing of upload sites continues to be a best practice, and we continue to do that. The National Federation of the Blind sued the Maryland State Board of Elections related to the ballot marking device implementation. Their request is that all voters use the BMD. SBE's directive for the counties is to deploy 2 per polling place, 4 per early voting site, and 5 persons minimum to vote on each device. The board sent a letter to the state board requesting elimination of the stubs. Yay. They finally have eliminated the ballot stub. I'm hoping that that doesn't end up killing us, but the letter received regarding provisional ballot envelope language was received. Response from SBE was in the advance packet. The state board changed the language. The Board of Public Works supported funding for the information security experts. The team is going to be evaluating SBE's IT system and infrastructure to mitigate for risk. This is not a short-term investment, but will be through the 2024 elections. The lead team member will begin in September, and no, I haven't met him or her. Poll book prototypes have been delivered to SBE for testing. Montgomery County staff will be participating in the new software upgrades, and we expect to have mock election testing the week of October 7th. And also in your packet is a program that the state board is implementing. We're going to share with our election judges, and it's kids will be designing the Maryland I Voted Today sticker.
Who pays the money?
Not us.
See, it says there's a prize. Money
there?
prize.
It's not coming out of my budget.
I don't know.
Okay, so anyway, if you have any grandchildren, nieces, or nephews that would like to participate, go to the website and sign up. That's it for SBE. Kevin, I think.
No, I think action items.
Action items, I kind of had that at the end.
Okay.
I would like to find out about what we're going our next step that we need to do for getting those ballots split open early.
Okay.
If you didn't receive it by your email today, it'll go out tomorrow morning. The briefing has been completed in the Judicial Watch case on whether the state board has to go ahead and release the dates of birth of registered voters in Montgomery County. Obviously, it will apply to everyone, but the state has now implemented a policy where they don't release dates of birth. And then the question is whether under the National Voter Registration Act there's a requirement that you do so. Judicial Watch has argued that it allows them to be able to better identify individuals, and they have relied upon a 2007 Fourth Circuit case that held that dates of birth need to be produced in response to a voter request. It's an interesting issue because obviously it's a 2007 case, and data breaches are much more on the rise, and courts are much more sensitive to the disclosure of personal data. So I'm not sure what Judge Hollander is going to do. There is this 2007 opinion, but there's really not much authority in this circuit since then. So that's where Judicial Watch stands. I suspect that probably won't be decided for another 3 months or 4 months on that issue. I had forwarded to you the MOU with Tacoma Park, and let me go ahead and give a little background on that issue. Time flies when you're having fun. I forget how many years ago it was, but I think this actually started 2 boards ago when there was legislation passed that allowed a municipality to have their elections on the same day as a statewide general election, with the thought being that you could increase participation in the municipal election if you had people go ahead and they vote in the statewide election, and then they go, oh, it's the day for our municipal election, I'll go vote in that. And so the board agreed, had meetings with Tacoma Park's elected officials. In fact, I think we actually got an extra, we did get a new polling place out of that.
Yes, we did, Don Bosco.
Don Bosco. So the board agreed to do that, and it was, and Tacoma Park made the appropriate changes to its charter to move the dates of its election to coincide with the general election. I was just forwarding to you the MOU, which is, basically the mechanics for how this is going to get implemented. The staff has worked, the board staff has worked very closely with the clerk's office in Tacoma Park to go ahead and come up with the particulars. I don't envision a big issue. I mean, there's going to be voting in different rooms. Basically, the costs are split entirely differently. Tacoma Park's picking up their costs for whatever they're going to be doing. They're going to be in a different room, except for Don Bosco, where there's going to have to be a divider because there's no suitable other room to put the elections in. But I just wanted to let you know, obviously I need to fill in some contact information. I spoke to Jessica. She'll be the contact person for absentee. Margaret will be the signatory and the person who will execute the agreement on behalf of the board. Does anyone have any questions about? Yes.
I gather they have their own election staff, their own poll book.
They have everything.
Basically, they're just running their own parallel election in the same location.
Correct.
So they're not using our volunteers. They're not using any of our equipment.
Well, it's not all
we have
clear.
a greeter.
I'm sorry, a greeter, so that people know which one they're going to.
Right.
Yeah.
Signage.
But basically, yes, they'll be using their own equipment with the caveat that if in the unlikely, and I say unlikely event that we somehow have extra equipment that is not going to be utilized in some form or fashion, the agreement provides that the board could allow Tacoma Park to do that. It's in there, but it is, as I said, a very unlikely proposition that we will have.
I'm guessing if we had such equipment, we would move it to another location where we needed it more.
We do not. Well, they never intended to use a scanner. The only thing that they might have used was the poll book. And right now, I've requested 154 poll books, and I've received 108.
I'm sorry.
Do they have the same balance?
I'm uncomfortable with the fact that it allows, however, the city, the county board, and the state board of elections to enter into a separate agreement regarding leasing and programming poll books. Once we sign off on this, it's out of our hands, and this is an open possibility. I'm uncomfortable with that.
It allows the option to do that, but it doesn't mean that we have to do that. That just says that the board and Tacoma Park and the state can agree if that is an option, but I don't think it's going to be an option. It is envisioned that Tacoma Park they'll use their own equipment, they'll have their own contracts, they'll have everything to be set.
Then can we just X that out if it's that remote?
The voter registration database for Tacoma Park every municipality, their database resides in our database. Anyone who's a registered voter, for instance, I live in Gaithersburg, so the city of Gaithersburg is going to come to us at some point and say, pull the data for the citizens of Gaithersburg so they can vote. Likewise, Tacoma Park. Now, Tacoma Park does have a separate database of their 16-year-olds and those individuals, but that's going to it's going to be residing on an entirely different poll book that is not connected to our poll book.
Okay, thank you. My newness to the board. I really appreciate this sort of
it's a separate
information.
So, and we don't know yet what, like I said, we requested 154 poll books. We've received 108. We may not get more. So we definitely will not have any extra poll books to share with anybody.
Okay.
Not even my peers.
All right.
Across the county state.
Thanks. That allays a concern that my lack of knowledge. Thank you.
I have no problem with the MOUs for one thing. They misspell your name on page 5.
I corrected that this morning. And it also says that we were acting on behalf of Montgomery County, which would not sit very well with the county attorney's office. I want to stay in good standing with Mr. Hanson, so that's been removed from the agreement as well.
I have a couple other issues on this, and I'll try to walk through them really quickly. I think just giving me the little background, it does mention that, okay, I'm going to skip right over that. You're going to think this is silly, but I have to voice my concerns. a single greeter will be stationed. Is there any possibility? Well, okay, that's not good. My concern is, could this greeter inadvertently have a human error at some point and direct a 16-year-old into the general or give out information that is somehow going to mix up? I'm concerned if you have one...
There is always a possibility of human error.
Right, which is why I tried to rephrase it.
But the fact of the matter is, a 16-year-old is not going to be sitting on the county, state of Maryland voter registration database. If that 16-year-old, for some unknown reason, shows up at our poll book, assuming that they are using our poll book, they're going to be told, you're not on the poll book,
I just needed
and we're just going to have to send them, say, sorry, you need to go down to the room, down the hall, where the city of Tacoma Park is having their election.
If they pre-register, as 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds can do for the county and the state, do they show up in the poll book, or do they only show up in our records here?
No.
We don't have
them.
They show up in MD voters as pending, but they don't show up. Janet and Jessica. They don't get pulled. They don't get pulled, so they wouldn't be in there.
They don't get pulled, so the election day poll book does not include them.
And it won't let you same-day registration for register one either.
I'm sorry?
It will not same-day registration will throw an error that says they're not old enough.
Right. I mean, they could, but they can. Are they allowed to register same-day? They'll have to pre-register same-day registration.
They're not allowed to same-day registration. All the poll book will.
Okay.
And we do mail a letter to them. The state gives us the extract, and we send all the 16 and 17-year-olds a letter that says you're not eligible.
Right.
Before the election as well.
And then I can skip right down to number 4 on the communication with voters. It says that the city shall be responsible for preparing and transmitting election notices and sample ballots for the elections. The county board may, at its discretion, include a notice regarding city elections in its sample ballot mailer. Are we talking about Tacoma Park specifically? Or,
yes.
Okay.
That would be the only one.
Okay, I would say that's kind of setting a precedent whereby we're going to be a clearinghouse for notices. There might be just Tacoma Park right now, but I just think that it's not wise to mix up a municipal election. Let's just keep Montgomery County clean, doing the job we're tasked to do. I don't like infiltration.
Don't we already do
of
some?
Other operations?
First of all, I mean, the board has already directed us in earlier meetings that one of the things that we have to add to the sample ballot is information on when is the best time to vote for early voting, add additional information with regards to absentee. This is a smaller election. As far as I'm concerned, there's not going to be any space in our sample ballot to do that. There's also the issue that was identified by the board that they want the address larger and more distinctive from the polling place information. So I'm not really confident at this point that there would be the ability to include that information. But
so can we take it out?
I wouldn't recommend taking it out, because all it does is say is that you as the board, when you get to the part where you look at the sample ballot, at your discretion, at your election, you either can include something or you don't include it. If you don't want to include it, that's what the MOU is designed to do, which is you all can decide that at the time you get to the point where you do the sample ballot.
It also may be to our benefit to include notices that refer people to other places for questions they have about other elections. So it may very well be that if we say, and I'm not suggesting that we do this, I'm just saying that it's a possibility, but if we were to say at certain precincts, municipalities are holding elections, here's, if you have a question about that election, contact this email address or this phone number, it may alleviate additional calls and stuff that you may get here.
I think that's where this language came from. I remember one meeting very early on in this process where there was some discussion about what the risks were that voters might contact Tacoma Park asking for an absentee ballot, thinking they were going to get their presidential election ballot, or that they might contact us thinking that in addition to getting their presidential, the contests that are on our ballot, that they would also receive a ballot for Tacoma Park. And so I think this was a placeholder for some language yet to be written that we might choose to put informationally explaining this to voters.
But again, it's you, the board, the way it's written, you all can decide that.
When the time comes.
When the time comes.
So this is not going to happen until we can sign off on it.
It's at your, you all need to approve the sample ballot,
Right.
and if you decide we don't have room, then at your discretion, nothing gets put in. If you decide you want to include something,
when we get the draft.
and when you say,
I didn't mean that to start talking. When you say sample ballot, you mean that nice little thing that is sent out to all registered voters, like a little leaflet booklet?
Yes.
Okay, I think then I might be almost done, just a couple little ones. It's getting tedious. I feel like I'm overwhelmed right now. Okay, I think that's about it. One last thing I had with the early voting. City will conduct early voting separate and apart from the county. City will provide information regarding blah, blah, blah. Staff at the county's early voting sites will endeavor to share such information with early voters seeking to vote in city elections. So are we going to be a clearinghouse for city questions? I just don't want to overburden our staff if we all of a sudden get 10 little municipalities who decide to do it on the same day. Then Montgomery County's not doing statewide election stuff anymore. We're having to respond to all these little jurisdictions.
No, I mean, I think the point is that in 2 minutes during training for early voting staff, which, they do an excellent job on, running these early voting centers, that if they get someone who shows up and wants to vote in Tacoma Park, that they realize that there is an election going on in Tacoma Park. And they have separate early voting sites than we have in Montgomery County. You need to go to one of those early voting sites if you want to vote in Tacoma Parks.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to be a major issue given the fact that we don't have an early voting center in Tacoma Park.
Right.
Okay.
I would hope that most voters would realize that you got to be in your jurisdiction to at least vote in your municipal election.
Okay. And then absentee there's no absentee in Tacoma Park ballots?
There is, but they're absentee. That's just simply, if we get a request for an absentee ballot,
for Tacoma Park,
for Tacoma Park, all that means is that we're going to fax it over to Tacoma Park and say, here's your application. That's really no different. That happens with other jurisdictions in other counties, but we may get a request for an absentee ballot for someone who lives in Howard County. So Jessica's team would then just fax it over or send it over to Howard County and say, this is one of your voters, you deal with it.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the list. Then I'll just slip right down to the bottom. Term and terminations, I would prefer a sunset rather than the MOU continuing indefinitely. Couldn't every election cycle we just re-up it so that we can review in case there have been issues with the memorandum of understanding? This says it's indefinite. I just am I constitutionally don't like having things like this indefinite.
Well, it's indefinite with a termination provision that allows you to go ahead and terminate the agreement if you think that there's some need to go ahead and change it.
With 60 days notice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what it's built into for. So if you go through 2020 and there are no issues and everyone's perfectly happy and we walk away from it, they took Tacoma Park says, this was a great experience. The Board of Elections says, no, this wasn't a problem, you go ahead and do. Then we don't need to do anything for the next year. It just kind of rolls over. Okay. On the other hand, if you said, well, we had this issue or we had that issue, then we have to terminate this agreement and then go ahead and do a new agreement, or we have to agree to amend the agreement that's already in place. So,
would it have to be an agenda item?
Oh, yeah.
So we would have to put notice before we change anything.
Sure. Yeah.
This way it just keeps going. If there's a problem.
If there's a problem, then you provide notice of determination, and that's the end of it.
Getting agenda items has not been hard.
Okay.
Pretty much we ask for them and they happen.
Yeah. I will tell you, and this goes back up, and I forget whether the gentleman was a council member or the mayor, but Tacoma Park, one of their elected officials that we used Don Bosco School, and we were struggling to have a polling place, finding a suitable polling place in Tacoma Park, and they were very helpful in at least addressing that issue. So that's been
They
very
saved
helpful.
us.
All right.
Tacoma Park saved us.
Okay, I'll give them that. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much.
All right, you were going to...
I need approval to enter into this MOU.
I move approval.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed?
Okay.
Unanimous,
Okay, you
Margaret.
can go home. All right.
You were going to talk about wait times, even though briefly?
Well, real briefly. Okay. Basically, I'm not going through this whole presentation, but what are we doing that's different? We've requested more equipment. We've ordered 144 additional scanners, an initial request of 38 ballot marking devices to be revisited after certification, 148 electronic poll books, 154 printers, 255 booths, 88 booths. And we are planning to increase the seated voting at all of our locations, whether that's early voting or polling places. We've increased the number of operational judges. We are aligning greeters with precincts with high population. We are addressing space separation for provisional voters. Everyone keeps hoping with the same-day voter registration, the number of provisional voters will go down, particularly in the general, because many times the provisional voter is a registered voter who just did a change of address. We're increasing the number of roamers, and we are planning to include the information with regards to peak time in the sample ballot. What are the outstanding issues as of right now? The whole upgrade of the voting equipment, the same-day voter registration process, implementation. We don't know what it is. We're waiting to receive that. Again, it's dependent on the voting equipment. So we need one without the other, or we need one to move forward on the other piece of it. Successful recruitment of the needed election judges, because we will need an increased number of election judges. Automatically, the state board said, same-day voter registration in the polling place, you automatically have to increase the number of voting operations judges by 2. We had planned on additional election judges, not less than 2, and sometimes 5 to 7. And that will, and then in order to have those additional election judges, we're going to need the funding for the increased number of election judges. So that's it in a nutshell. I'll be happy to go over this with you in the PowerPoint presentation next month.
If it sounds like it's already written.
Well, yeah, I was kind of hoping that I was waiting for the state to tell me that we have a new system, 6100 series system, and also for Janet, her team, to tell me what kind of poll book we're going to have if the new voting software is working.
It just would be helpful, I think, to board members to have access to that information as soon as possible, and then for the public to have access to that information as soon as possible.
Okay.
Even if it's long in advance of the next meeting, once you have it, I think it would be useful to get.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Board bylaws.
Kevin, you sent something out to streamline this discussion, right?
Yes.
Did you hear back from anybody?
Well, yes, Alan did respond and sent out an email that was sent to everyone where he broke down section 4.2. Alan, you want to address this? I quite frankly thought it was a good suggestion. I don't see a problem.
It's just simply to make it easier to read. It's the same as we've had before.
Yeah, it's basically 4.2. It's just broken down into a couple additional subsections.
Yeah.
This is on our political participation, correct?
That's 4.2 is political activity.
Well, in terms of the bylaws, is that the only topic we're discussing?
Let me just read.
I have a comment about one of them that I want to make. Just let me know when you want me to.
Well, let me read it, because you're going to then make a comment about what I'm going to read.
Sure.
So Alan's proposed change would be for any candidate or issue on the ballot in an election for which the member will be serving on a local board of elections. The member may not use his or her name as a host of a political event, solicit a political contribution from anyone, or allow his or her name to be used to solicit such a contribution. That's Section 5. Section 6, Jack, this is, I think, what you're going to hit on. Members may not publicly display, friends, including through yard signs, bumper stickers, or publicly comment or show support for or opposition to any candidate or issue on the ballot in an election for which the member will be serving on the local boards of canvassers. 7th, members may not wear campaign buttons, paraphernalia, or the like which will show support for or opposition to any candidate or issue on the ballot in an election for which the member will be serving on the local board of elections. And Jackie, from overhearing your earlier conversation, I suspect you want to address issue number 6.
Me too.
But before you get to that, there are other issues that are in that section about attending central committee meetings and party activities. Is that contributions? I think has already been dealt with what Kevin just read, but you didn't read anything about
No, the contributions is a different issue.
Yeah, he talked about soliciting.
So Section 5 says for any candidate or issue on the ballot in an election for which a member will be serving on the local board.
I see. You can't solicit, but it doesn't say that you can't make a contribution. It's a separate
This
section.
says a member may not use his or her name as a
Got
host
it.
of a political
Got
event,
it.
solicit a political contribution from anyone, or allow his or her name to be used to solicit such a contribution.
So the section that where we can't make contributions has been taken out.
That's going to be the next item for you all to discuss,
Yeah,
because
well-
I know that there's not
It's separated, not taken out.
So the question is, Alan just simply breaks the section down, 4.2, to make it clear, and I agree it is clearer in Alan's revision.
Yeah.
Jackie's and Nahid's comment is, as I understand it, is an objection to not being able to post yard signs, correct?
No, because my husband lives with me. If he has his own opinion, it's his home too. So if you want to have a sign, I mean, we don't do that, but you should do that. I mean, nothing to do with me.
There's nothing in the bylaws that applies to your spouse, children, significant other, or anything. The bylaws has no jurisdiction over those people. The bylaws says what applies to you. And so if you put up a sign, then that's an issue for the bylaws. If Isa puts up a sign, that's not an issue for the bylaws.
I'm saying that when you're driving, you see a sign there, so how do you know that who put it there?
You don't.
David, let me just ask you a question. Is what you're saying to me, unlike what you and I have said to each other before?
Yes.
It's what you're saying. If I carry the sign out and put it in my yard,
You have violated the
that
bylaws.
I violated.
Correct.
But if my other people that live in the house with me or use various, they can take the sign.
If they have a right to put the sign on your yard, based on whatever the laws are on putting the sign on your yard, then they are not covered by the bylaws, because the bylaws only apply to us.
Thank you.
Nice.
Distinction.
Since you have a cool.
Now, did you want to talk about giving the money? In the state, at the end of every meeting, they say how much money they've given. Everybody on the board to candidates. This says we can't do it.
What is the status of this whole document right now? Do you need a motion? Do you want how do you want to proceed from here?
Well, we have to approve the bylaws that Kevin's going to send to.
Yeah,
we have
to.
The state's waiting.
Right? No, I understand, but I submitted largely on behalf of Alan and myself a number of a version of the bylaws that mostly just had grammatical and all that kind of stuff difference. I believe the only area of controversy was this area, but I don't remember whether we actually moved it as such, because I don't know how far we got in the conversation last time.
I think the only issue left is contribution.
So the question is, do you want me to move the approval of what I submitted, and then you can propose to amend it in the way that you see fit? Because most of the other changes, I think, were non-controversial.
What are you saying, yours? A ban?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's what I believe in.
Okay. So that's the last issue.
But it's obviously everything is subject to amendment. I'm just thinking that if we have a separate conversation about an issue without anything in front of us,
no, it's a good point.
It just seems
much easier.
Yeah.
Why don't you make a motion for approval of the bylaws, including your proposed amendments that were circulated, and then there can be a discussion
okay.
on contribution.
Do you, I make that motion. Do you need me to tell you when it was circulated?
July 25th.
Yeah.
Okay, July 25th. Now, am I also to include whatever Alan did to this section?
Yes.
To 4.2?
It is the document that contains your comments,
right.
Alan's comments and my comments.
Right. But in addition to that, Alan suggested separately to divide that stuff out.
Correct.
And you want me to include that in my motion?
Correct.
Yes.
So, okay. So it's what I sent out on July 25th, plus what Alan did to reorganize this, and then it's open to debate.
Well, do we have to amend? I know.
I second that.
Okay. But the one issue left to discuss is whether or not board members can contribute, or should we disclose? Do we need an amendment for that, or?
Yes.
Is there an amendment to David's motion?
To amend section
4.2.
Diane, you'll do that.
Just say what?
That board members can make contributions, but they will be disclosed at the next board meeting.
4.2.
Could I make a Let me make a suggestion. The provision includes a couple of different things that you may want to consider as you're figuring this out. There's one provision that talks about whether you can attend campaign fundraisers for candidates or ballot issue committees. There's another, although it separates out political parties, and it says you can attend those.
Right.
And then there's a separate one that talks about not making campaign contributions. And I think you all have to decide: are you objecting to both of those provisions, or only one of them?
Can we attend fundraising, guest of somebody?
Let's go ahead and break them down.
Yeah,
So
it says we may attend.
4.2B3, as it says now, as it was proposed by David, was a board member shall not attend campaign fundraisers for candidates or ballot issue committees that will appear on the ballot counted by the local board canvassers, but may attend fundraisers held by political parties, provided the member pays for his or her ticket and does not publicly indicate at the fundraiser that he or she is a member of the Board of Elections.
And that is fairly similar in terms of the paying for your ticket part is fairly similar to what we've had in the past.
So the discussion would be to change the word "may attend" as opposed to.
Well, it says cannot.
No, it says shall not attend campaign fundraisers for candidates or ballot issues.
Right.
And then there's the other.
Right. The question is, do you want to have a provision that's, do you want to treat it like I had treated political parties, which is that you can attend as long as you pay for your ticket and do not publicly indicate that you are that you are a member of the board, or did you want to have some other rules relating to that?
I like the first. You can attend.
Okay. So basically, it sounds like you want to change paragraph 3 to say a member may attend campaign fundraisers for candidates or ballot issue committees or political parties. I'm sorry, they will appear on the ballot or political parties, provided that, and keep going from there. Now, having said that, I'm helping you, but I'm not voting for it.
What was the other amendment? Then it was on the contribution.
Yes, that's in paragraph 4. But if you want to do this one first,
Yeah,
Okay.
But if political parties generally at a dinner will introduce people that are, the Central Committee, the Board of Elections, the Board of Appeals, people that serve from the party on those boards. You've got it in there, they can't do that.
we have instructed our party officials are not to introduce us.
It's the event for that fundraising event, something like that. No, Lincoln Day dinner is not. It's MCGOP
we're
event.
saying it
social
doesn't
event.
have to be a party sponsored because parties sometimes don't take positions during primaries, and I would like the ability to go to a primaries
I just
event
want that being in there at all.
Alan?
without having to be restricted to the party, which
Al?
I all the problems.
To remind you that under Section 2-301 of the Election Code, we cannot use this is board members, shall not use the individual's official authority for the purpose of influencing or affecting the result of an election. And I think that it can easily be construed that if you are at a fundraiser for a given candidate, and especially if you're introduced that you're a board member.
Well, no, you can't do that.
You were just talking about
You
that.
can't be introduced as a board member.
She was just talking about that.
I didn't.
No, that was a different.
Other political event.
That's a
I thought it
social
meant that
event.
you couldn't be introduced at all.
That one is a social event.
No,
That's
as
a
I
social
understand
event.
it, they can say, we're really glad Jackie Phillips is here. What they can't say is, we're really glad Jackie Phillips of the Board of Elections is here.
Yes.
Is the social event?
Any event.
County
Any
social
kind of
event? No,
fundraiser
I'm
event.
asking.
Any
fundraiser.
A political fundraiser.
All the events are fundraisers.
Oh, that's not a fundraiser for a primary candidate. Yeah, that's not an issue.
All right, let's take up the
Well-
First Amendment.
Okay.
Well, it sounds like there's some disagreement as to what it should say.
Yeah.
I personally, I'll just express my view.
What does it say on the amendment?
I didn't write down the amendment.
Oh.
I can tell you what I think it said, which is that I believe that you all said that you want to be able to, you want it to say that a member may attend campaign fundraisers for candidates or ballot issue committees that will appear on ballots counted by the local board of canvassers, as well as fundraisers held by political parties, provided the member pays for his or her ticket and does not publicly indicate at the fundraiser that he or she is a member of the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Is there a move? Somebody move?
Yeah, move. That's a move to accept what just David read.
Amendment? Is there a
Yeah.
second on that amendment?
A second.
Okay.
All right.
Discussion?
I'm going to vote against the amendment that I just helped you to write.
David, we love you for it.
You're being so accommodating.
I am being accommodating to allow you to pass a rule that I don't agree with.
What is the objection?
My objection is that I think that the perception of our impartiality is a very important thing for our credibility, and that if we are appearing at these events, and even though you're paying for your ticket, even though you are not being introduced as a member of the board, everyone knows you're a member of the board, and
Not in my part.
or a lot of people do, and it will imply to people that you have a particular relationship with a particular candidate, and that you may be, and that you are tied to them in ways that you aren't tied to others. And the example I would give you is that we had 2 recounts in this last election, one for county executive and one for state delegate in the district in which I live. And I felt very fortunate that I had not given to either of the candidates running in my district, had not been at their events, etc., because I think it would have looked to whoever was on the other side of that recount as if I was more closely associated with one side than I should have been.
I have a question there. You're talking about fundraising event, you're talking about social event.
This is
This is
at the
fundraising.
moment, this is fundraising.
Fundraising, okay.
I can
That's
counter
understand.
your concern with what people assume by, you could just as easily be there doing opposition research. I mean, I've attended fundraisers for candidates I have absolutely no intention of the world of supporting, and I absolutely am on the record of supporting someone else. So I think that argument can go both ways, so I'm not
Well,
concerned
we're also
about
going
that.
to, I think disclosure can
Yeah.
allay some concerns too.
Well, let me ask a question. Are you proposing to disclose when you attend fundraisers, or only to disclose when you make contributions?
Make contributions.
Contributions.
Okay. Well, we haven't gotten to that paragraph yet. You
All
want
right.
to say anything?
Okay, so are we
Okay,
voting
so
on
we're
anything?
voting now on the Nahid's, I think, amendment that board members may attend fundraisers with the caveats and restrictions that David mentioned. That we made. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Diane? Okay, all those opposed?
No.
Okay, that passes.
Oh, jeez.
And then we go to the contribution clause, Kevin?
Yes, and that should just, that's 4.2B4, and the question is, currently the proposal is a member shall not make campaign contributions to candidates or issues on the ballot in an election for which the member will be serving on the local board of canvassers. And so,
Did we just take care of that?
No, you took care of attending fundraisers. This is making contributions.
So just for
Because you could-
clarifying for minutes purposes, the one that just passed the amendment was for 4.2B3, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and now we're talking about
4.
Okay.
Wasn't there an option for
So,
disclosure?
is there a motion to include the following language? A member shall,
Or may.
a member may make campaign contributions to candidates or issues on the ballot in an election for which the member will be serving on the local board of elections, provided the member discloses the contributions to the board.
Yes. Agreed.
That's one of the options we got from the state.
That's the way it started out.
Is that a motion?
Yeah. Is that a motion?
I move, yes.
Diane,
Yes,
is that a second?
Yeah, I second.
Okay, go ahead.
I move to amend the motion to add discloses the contributions to the board at the beginning of the next public meeting of the board, including the date, amount, and recipient of the contribution.
May I suggest, David, that you not say at the beginning of the meeting? I know the state board does it at the end of the meeting.
I was intentionally doing it at the beginning of the meeting because if there's a conflict of interest, people should know it before you take an action. They shouldn't have to wait till the end of the meeting. Let's suppose that there's a contribution and on the ballot, on our agenda.
Oh, I can understand why you're saying that,
Yeah.
but I've never,
Well,
What's the language again, David?
I guess I have to.
Disclose at the beginning of the next meeting of the board.
At the
the
next-
date, the amount.
The date, amount, and recipient of the contribution, and that's at the next public meeting of the board.
He's,
What are you going to
my
vote?
husband is sick a little bit, sorry.
Okay.
So Jackie will vote, right? Nahid?
Yeah.
Okay, was there a second to David's?
Oh, a second.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to vote on David's amendment. Can you give it to us? A board member may,
A board member may make campaign contributions to candidates or issues on the ballot in an election for which the member will be serving on the local board of canvassers, provided the member discloses the contributions to the board at the beginning of the next regularly scheduled board meeting. What's it?
The date.
To include
Of
the date.
Of the date, amount, and recipient
recipient.
of the donation.
that's fine.
I just don't like it at the beginning of the meeting, I think, but I don't care about the rest.
Jim?
Al?
I'll tell you what. Why don't we just say at the next regularly scheduled board meeting, and
We're taking out at the beginning.
we can fight over the timing on the agenda another day.
The disclosure?
Okay, so we're
No,
going
he
to just
took
add
out
them.
At the next at the next public meeting, at the next public board meeting.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Okay.
Alan?
If I were to vote, I would vote
Okay.
no on that, because I think that we shouldn't be giving any money at all to people or issues on the ballot. I think it's
Alan, we are doing an amendment. We're not voting on whether to give money at all or not. I'm going to be voting against the main motion.
What I was going to say is, in a way, you're advertising. Now at the meeting, you're advertising that you have given money to a candidate. That multiplies the influence.
I know
as
the
far as I'm
state
concerned.
does it, and that,
So
I
let's
would
not
just follow
do
the
it.
state.
I mean, if you disclose it, it's an open record. You're not hiding anything from anybody.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to make this into an inquisition.
State board does it.
It's not an inquisition.
Well, to
It
me,
is.
it feels like an inquisition.
Well, a board member doesn't have to contribute.
That's correct.
Okay, so
Free
let's.
speech, Jim.
No, I said, but you don't have. You can, if you do, disclosure. But you
No,
know.
I'm agreeing with disclosure. I'm not
Yeah.
agreeing with having to march in here and announce to everybody what I've done when it's already public record if I disclose
Well,
it.
but even the provision without my amendment requires you to disclose it to the board. It just
This
doesn't.
is what I
It just doesn't.
said. We don't need to get.
But that's the only the state is requiring us to either do that or ban. It's the state.
All I'm doing is specifying
David's
how.
adding
I
all
don't
the
even know
little
what
Mickey
you all are
Mouse
talking
stuff.
about now. Aren't you? Are you all talking about the same thing, just in
Yes,
different
David
words?
just wants to have the minutia aired at the meeting, and I'm saying that is
I'm sorry.
chilling.
Well, what would you do?
I would.
So, hold on.
I would write it down.
So,
I don't know. I'm not gonna.
We're going to submit these. If we don't, you don't have to take a position one way or the other. You either make contributions and you disclose you made them,
Tell him
or you don't make contributions. But I can tell you what's going to happen. Nikki Trella is going to go ahead and call me up and say, Kevin, you have two options. Your board has two options. You either can do one or the other. Which one are you going to do? And we're not going to approve your bylaws until you pick one.
Right.
No,
but we're discussing
I think
a bunch
Diane
of
is
things.
objecting to the method of disclosure.
Right,
Yeah,
but what I heard her say that it's already publicly disclosed, that would not imply disclosure to the board. That would imply disclosure to the to the campaign officials,
Well,
to
that's
the campaign
required.
finance system. That's already required by law. This is an additional disclosure, and even if my amendment doesn't pass, there's still going to be some form of disclosure at board meetings.
I get the view. Say what are the two things Nikki says? We either do this or what?
It's either a ban or we make a contribution and
And
disclose
announce
it. Correct.
So
That's the only
We
choice.
don't have to come in here and tell everybody what I did, how much I did it, and when I did it.
Did you
That
just
is
hear what they said? The state is telling us we have to either ban us making any contributions or announcing
I'm
them.
saying we disclose it, but we don't have to come in and say how much, what date.
Well then,
What would you be disclosing then? What would your disclosure look like if it didn't say how much and
I
what
would
date
simply-
and who it was to?
I would send a note, an email to whatever place we're supposed to report this.
To your peers,
Yeah.
to your board members. I mean, it will become a matter of public record.
well, the candidate has to report it.
Right.
I know,
By law.
but no,
No.
as part of the board meeting.
No, I hear you.
There's a, as I understand it, there's a footnote in the bylaws that the state provided that says that the purpose of this disclosure is for other board members to be able to raise the question of whether recusal is required. So you are disclosing it to you're disclosing it to your peers, like Margaret said, regardless. All I was doing was suggesting a particular place and way of doing it. I've taken out the part of which part of the meeting it's in, but if we're going to comply with what the state is doing, it's interesting to me. The state is rarely cited as an example for us to follow in other areas. But my suggestion is to lay out the specifics in public. If you're in favor of disclosure, you're in favor of disclosure.
We had a recount for like 12 vote difference in a delegate race, and if one of our board members, no name, gave Samir Paul, for example, $1,000, I would have asked that board member to disqualify themselves in that recount. That's the purpose of it.
And if someone had given $20, would you have made the same request?
No.
Then that's the reason for it.
Yeah, if someone gives $10, but if someone gave $1,000 to a candidate and we got a recount, the appearance would be, I would recommend that
you'd have to
recuse.
Right. So by $20 is okay?
Yeah.
So that's a good excuse to give people $20.
But I mean, that's why David wanted to
That's
put
our
in the
discretion.
amount, the person, so Jim
Right.
can make that decision.
So where are we at with regards to this? Where are we
The
at?
amendment is on. The amendment is on the floor.
Okay.
Right.
This is
I'm ready.
David's amendment.
I'm ready to vote. If you are.
Okay.
Can you recite the language one more time?
Yeah,
We
thank
have
you.
it here.
I don't
I am adding at the end, after disclose the contributions to the board at the next public board meeting of the date, amount, and recipient of the donation. Or actually, I should say of the contribution, so that we use the same word that we used before.
Yeah, it's okay.
I just think it's...
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay, that passes.
Okay, now you're back to your original motion, which is to change the from shall not make contributions to you may make contributions.
Huh?
What?
We just amended the motion. We amended your amendment so that now you're back to voting on the amendment. The amendment was to take what I had said, which was ban them, and to have disclosure instead.
So now I vote for what I just voted against.
Well, no, you voted against my
Minutia.
right.
So what are we
Voted
voting?
against David's
The
amendment.
minutia.
Now
Right,
we're
you can
doing
call it
the overall
minutia.
amendment.
Jim didn't seem to think so.
So what?
Well, we are not saying...
What are we
people
voting?
No, you're not.
To disclose
Right,
according to
right,
what David said
right,
or not
disclose or not. So I just want to speak to what to why I'm in favor of banning. I'm in favor of banning the contributions, pretty much for the reasons that Alan was describing for being against my amendment. I do think that if we make public all of our contributions, I think we have to in order for the public to understand where we are. But I think that to do so will not make the board look good. I think it will make the board look like we are way too involved politically with the people that we are essentially charged with deciding whether they were legitimately elected or not. So while I believe that disclosure should be detailed if there is disclosure, I personally believe, and I, for myself, I do not make contributions to candidates who are on the ballot that we are, for which we are serving as the Board of Canvassers. So I would urge that the amendment be defeated.
Okay, so we're going to vote on
disclosure or not.
I know, seriously, I have no idea.
The amendment is to strike the shall not and to replace it with may, and to because it used to say shall not make campaign contributions. Now it says may make campaign contributions. And then it says, provided that the member discloses the contributions to the board at the next public board meeting of the date, amount, and recipient of the contribution.
It's like I said, we're voting on the same thing we just did.
I thought that
Except
it's how you're doing it.
Except he's striking shall not and inserting new language that says may.
Right.
I swear I thought that's
that
what I
was
just
not
voted
Heath.
on.
That was not Heath and Diane's second.
That's what we
That was
already...
the original amendment.
right. Because initially it was shall not. So now we're just implementing what we just voted for.
That's like I said. Now we're voting on the same thing we just voted on.
Okay.
It's the same language, right?
It is.
Please,
It is.
somebody
But we
help
got to
me.
get out the shall not. We got to take out the shall not.
Okay, what do you
Okay.
Can you call, oh my God, it's the same language.
Do we have?
Did someone call a question?
I agree.
Yeah. All those in favor, say aye.
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 She
Aye.
aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay.
No. You didn't ask for the no's, but
okay, no's.
But no.
Then you trick us.
Okay.
I didn't trick you at all.
I think that does it with the bylaws.
Should be, yeah.
But yet, wait, there has to be a vote on the overall bylaw.
Overall bylaws.
All right, is there a motion to
I
accept?
already made a motion to accept the.
Oh, and a second?
Right.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
So what happens if we march in here some meeting and forget to tell you exactly how much we spent on the rent on exactly what day?
Tell them the next one. I mean, it's.
All right, we have a note here for a minutes committee, but is that being tabled?
One sentence, yeah, we're going to.
One sentence. Jackie and I are still discussing the level of detail. You will notice the level of detail has gotten less, and we are generally looking for ways to figure out what is the amount of detail that is necessary, but we're not done.
Perfect.
Okay.
Question for Kevin about the bylaws. Will the final product have the footnotes or no?
No.
Okay.
Okay, future vote is going to be laid over
Right.
for Kevin and I to research.
And there's no follow-up. Our meeting was very good.
Good.
Lisa and I
Okay.
both had things to say.
So
Obviously, he said he was going to do stuff.
So our next meeting is October 20th.
Nope, we have new business. Advance determination was provided for Mark Mottman for circulators of the county petition related to the makeup of the county council. And secondly, in preparation for your next board meeting, in your packet, you should have this document, which is so far our proposed list of polling place changes for the upcoming 2020. For 2020.
Could you please send it to us electronically?
We'll send it to you electronically, but we wanted to make sure that you saw this. The thing that's significant about this is number one, we're talking about making Silver Spring a major voting center, and we'll explain to you why at the next board
I'm
meeting.
sorry, where is that?
That's in the green part. And then the second thing is that because of the construction schedule for the school system, we are introducing the concept that we keep them at their old new, last year's early precinct location, but return them to their home precinct for the general election. But this is something new, the board's never done. We did kind of do it with Bethel and Schreiber Aquatic Center, but I just want you, this is significantly different than we've done in the past, and so I wanted you to be aware of it.
Okay.
So the theory on this, for example, for Tilden Middle School is that the new Tilden Middle School opens between the primary and the general, so you're going to have the same two precincts at the old Tilden Middle School in the primary and at the new Tilden Middle School in the general.
Yes.
Right.
Question, you want to have 417 by the Kennedy Shriver Aquatic Center?
Yep.
That was really bad.
Well, we'll talk about the next one.
Okay.
Thank suits, everybody.
Okay, I have one more thing. We received in our packet today a number of communications that came electronically to the board's email address. I think we had a conversation on the last board about having these forwarded to us because these all dealt with things that we were voting on today, and it would have been very helpful to have seen them when they arrived.
But wait, isn't that the
a
open
bunch
meetings
of them,
violation?
all of them came to you that we had received, and then
packet.
in the advance packet. And
The ones that were available at the time of the events packet, which was about a week ago. Usually it's about 10 days. Those we got in advance, but anything that came between then and today would be in this package and was not received electronically.
It was Thursday till today.
Right.
Majority came through the weekend.
Right. But whatever it was, and there's a number here that came last week. It would be helpful to us when we have things that come in for us. Forwarding it to us is not that hard. It would be helpful to us to be able to look at things before we have to vote on them, because when we're sitting here, it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Noted.
Yeah. Let me just say,
One more thing
I've noticed a lot lately on the internet. I would ask everybody. I know Alan sent something about a newspaper article, and Diane makes comments, and I do too. I think we should all be very aware of the open meetings law and kind of keep any comments we have about issues that we're going to vote for public discussion. Because the last meeting I went to with the state board, they said do not communicate on issues that are going to be voted on in the public. So I would just ask everybody to.
That would include disseminating articles.
I mean, if someone sends something that's an argument in favor of something we're going to vote on, I would suggest not doing it. You know.
Well, we have action items for the end.
It's kind of hard. Not
Action items to action items, real quickly. Where's the minutes? All of the action items were resolved.
No, I don't mean last
You
week.
mean from today?
Today.
Oh.
Well, Kevin is going to the letter regarding the extra $349,000 expenditure.
Right.
Future vote?
And then
Right, future vote for the next.
week.
Well, that's on the agenda.
Next meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
That's on the agenda. Yeah.
And then
you asked for placing in writing.
what did I say?
About election judges, or was it
Would it help
wait times?
I gotta
a
go.
future vote? Anita somehow.
Oh, what Margaret was reading from her notes there.
Oh, yes, I asked for a copy of the PowerPoint for the wait times as soon as it's available.
Okay.
And then I guess a question would be, I don't know what the follow-up will be about the two different options at Wheaton. I guess we could just put it on a future agenda.
Yeah.
To see what we can find out.
So,
Exactly.
are you handling the information that goes back to the state about the polling locations and the...
No, we have to do that.
Okay.
Staff will have to do all the surveys and all that.
Okay.
Mark, when are they going to vote on this?
Okay. So, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, but
Wait, hang on.
Isn't this, aren't we going to meet before the state board meets?
Yes.
Okay, so next month, you all can then look at these options again in terms of the gym
Right.
or the social hall. And
Right.
meet,
All right.
And then
October
convey to
21st.
the
Right.
state board, which, if that's still your preference or whether you
Right.
want to go.
Yeah.
So as far as making that decision, if we could get options for covering the floor, not just the cost, but if there are any less costly less costly options, and the options on the electricity.
Yep.
And then obviously covering the windows, locking the doors, etc.
So it's not September 30th that this has to go
No,
in?
that's our
No,
deadline.
the paperwork has to be submitted, but we can
Submitted to-
still make decisions about between
Preference.
our preference and our secondary.
But the
But you'll
state
handle that.
board has to make
Yeah.
their decision by October 30th.
But because you all you'll meet before the state board has their next
Right.
state board meeting.
We get another bite at the apple.
Exactly.
Done a chance to
Okay.
decide.
Move the meeting closed.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No.